Chapter 421. The idea of planting flowers was suggested by Murphy. In the past few days, Faye had been idling at home. She found that the flower bed outside the coffee shop, after a winter's destruction, the flowers inside were scattered. It was no longer as blooming as before, and even weeds had grown in many places. Thus, Murphy suggested that the family use this weekend to take care of the flower garden. Yang readily agreed, and he was also very happy to organize such a family activity. So this morning, she, who was going to participate in the work, was armed by her father. The little girl was wearing long water shoes, denim suspenders, and a towel of the same style as the old workers was tied around her neck. She wore a sun hat on her head, and the pink little fairy suddenly turned into a pure and lovely little village girl. But she still thought that this outfit was very interesting, and giggled nonstop in the morning. Before planting flowers, they had to remove the weeds and loosen the soil. This labor was taken care of by Yang, and Murphy helped to dig out the flowers that were still alive, and put them aside with the soil. Of course, she was still given a small piece of the task field, which was full of weeds. The little girl was very excited, and she did not feel tired at all. She waved her little hoe with all her might, and plowed that piece of land as if it had been dug by dogs. When she went on stage, Yang naturally did not dare to relax, and he carefully watched from the side, afraid that the little girl would swing the hoe and hit his foot. Although it was a child's hoe, the handle was made of hard plastic, and the blade was made of wood, and the blade was blunt, but it was still heavy, and it would be terrible if it hit his head or foot. But the little girl was very happy, and she tirelessly turned that small piece of land upside down. Okay, that's enough. Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry as he pulled his daughter. Dad, let me play for a while, okay? Let me help you, okay? The little girl pointed at the piece of land that her father had not finished, and said expectantly, "That won't do. This hoe can't be used for too long. In a while it will break. Don't you want to keep it as a souvenir?" Yang said with a smile. She looked at the hoe with the cartoon sticker on it, and then at her father's field. After some hesitation, she chose to cherish it. Okay. She, come over here and help Mom hold this flower. Mom wants to change the soil for it. Murphy chimed in. She gave Shi another small task. Seeing Yang and the others working, Ding Xiang and Yang Huan wanted to come out and help, but they were rejected by Yang. There was no need to make a big fuss over such a small garden. Moreover, Yang intended to treat this as a family activity and let Shi experience the joy of working. Yang used a rake to loosen the soil in the flower bed. At the same time, he sorted out the stones and grass mixed in the soil. When Yang finished, he turned his head and saw Shi was focused on helping her mother hold the stems of the flowers. Murphy, on the other hand, was clearing the soil around the flowers that were dug out from the flower bed, leaving only the moist soil around the roots. The little girl squatting on the ground was very serious. There was no smile on her little face, and her little mouth was slightly open, as if she had forgotten to close it. Murphy did not care about her image at all. She was kneeling on the soil with one knee, tilting her head and using a small broom to tidy up the soil around the roots of the flowers. If her hair was not tied up, it would probably be hanging to the ground. Perhaps she did not notice when she was wiping her sweat, but Murphy's face was also stained with some soil. She looked like a completely different person from the gorgeous, high-spirited star on the stage. Now Murphy, like Shi, was like a beautiful village girl. But in Yang's eyes, their image was also very beautiful, very real, and pitiful. Finally Murphy was done. She clapped her hands, raised her head with a smile, and said, "I've made you wait for a long time. Now let's plant the flowers." Yang came back to his senses at this time. He walked over, took off the towel around his neck, and wiped the soil on Murphy's face. He said softly, "You've worked hard." "How is it hard?" "I'm very happy." Yang showed off his love with Murphy outdoors in front of his daughter. Murphy was happy in her heart, but she was still a little embarrassed, so she whispered, "Papa, you don't say that I've worked hard. Look, I'm so dirty." She felt that her hands were dirty, but she did not know where to wipe them. She also liked to be clean, so she was reluctant to wipe them on her denim suspenders. Now that she saw that her father was busy wiping her mother's face and ignoring her, she pouted and said unhappily, Yang Yi could not help laughing. He came over with a towel and said lovingly, "Okay, I'll wipe it for you now. You've worked hard too." When planting flowers, Yang Yi and the others did not need to rush the progress. They could take their time. Therefore, they did not need to be in charge of which piece of land like before. Instead, they arranged the process of planting flowers according to the difficulty of the work. Yang Yi was responsible for digging the hole and filling the soil behind, while Murphy was responsible for carrying the flower plants and planting them. Of course, the flowers here, in addition to the original flower plants, also included the artificially cultivated flower seedlings that Yang Yi bought at the flower and bird market yesterday. Murphy had her own ideas about the layout. As for Shi, she was responsible for flattening the soil that her father had filled, and then watering it. He saw the little girl running around happily with her little shower head in her hand. After her parents finished planting the flowers, she used her cute water boots to flatten the soil next to the flower plants. Then she took 2 steps back and carefully watered them with the sprinkler, as if she was worried that the water would spill on her beautiful water boots. The sprinkler was not big enough. After all, it was for children. After watering it once, she had to go to the bucket next to her to fill it with water. The weather was still a little cold, and the water in the bucket was also very cold. In the morning, Shi was frozen once. The cold made the little girl grimace in pain when she wanted to wash her hands. Therefore, every time Shi filled the bucket with water, she had to be careful and try to avoid direct contact with the water in the bucket. But accidents were always inevitable. Wow! Cece grabbed the shower head and didn't notice that she had raised it a little. As a result, a stream of water flowed down and dripped onto the little girl's hand through the handle of the shower head, causing Cece to exclaim in surprise. "What's wrong?" Murphy looked at her worriedly. However, the little girl giggled. She walked over with the sprinkler and told her mom about it as a joke. "Mom, let me tell you. When the water fell, I thought it would be very cold, but it wasn't. I got a fright." It turned out that after the sun rose, the water in the bucket was not as cold as before. Moreover, after the sprinkler, the temperature was obviously not as low as before. She gave herself a fright. After Murphy figured it out, she laughed too. She rolled up Shishi's wet sleeves and said, "You didn't scare yourself, but you scared Mom." Amidst such laughter, the family worked for the whole morning and finally renovated the flower bed. However, the results could not be seen yet. Apart from a small area where the presbyopia was planted, the flowers in the other areas were still in the state of seedlings. It would probably take a few more weeks for them to bloom. But looking at the neatly arranged flower bed, not only was Mo Fei very happy, but Yang Yi also felt a lot better. It was because the number of flower seedlings he bought was correct. It was just enough to plant even rows and even columns. Although the flower bed was not square, this neat arrangement made people feel very comfortable at first glance. When they returned to the coffee shop, Yang Yi was about to take Murphy and Shi to the bathroom in the back to wash their shoes and hands before going upstairs. However, when he saw Guizi hiding in the coffee shop, he became alert. Chapter 422. Guizi, it's already noon, and you're still not willing to go back to the dorm. Don't tell me you're thinking of sneaking into a girl's rented apartment again? Yang Yi was both teasing and warning him, his eyes flashing dangerously. Guizi shuddered and quickly smiled. "No, I'm just chatting with Sister Ding Xiang. I'm going to ask her to have lunch at the cafeteria, and then we'll go our separate ways." "Big brother, we were just talking about management companies. Those management companies are especially unreliable now, and Xiaoguo is worried that she'll run into companies like Ronghuada that ruin her youth." Yang Huan was more eloquent, and she spoke directly. Speaking of this, Murphy felt a little uncomfortable. She didn't know how to evaluate Tianmei when she was still there, so she smiled and said to Yang Huan and the others, "I'll take Shishi to wash her hands first. You guys can continue chatting." Ding Xiang took out a plate of cookies from the cabinet, smiled and winked at Shishi, and said, "Shishi, hurry up and wash your hands. You can eat cookies later. Sister Ding Xiang and Aunt Huan Huan just baked them." Shishi's eyes lit up. She tiptoed and wanted to take a look, but she couldn't reach the plate. She asked, "Is it a bear cookie?" The bear biscuits that Cece was talking about weren't the bear biscuits from his previous life. Instead, it was a model of a bear that Ding Xiang had made by herself. Then, she used this model to make the biscuits. When the biscuits were baked, the bear's face could be seen. It was very cute and was also Cece's favorite. Of course I know. This is your favorite. Ding Xiang picked up a cookie and shook it. Hee hee, then wait for me to come back. The little girl hurriedly grabbed Mom's hand and ran to the bathroom. Mom, I want to eat cookies. Hurry up and wash your hands. On the other side, Guozi was envious. He reached out his hand and said, Why didn't you tell me you made cookies earlier? I'm starving to death. However, Ding Xiang slapped his hand away and smiled. You can't eat yet. This is for Shishi. It's only your turn after Shishi finishes eating. Yang Huan, however, continued the topic excitedly. Big brother, aren't you and sister-in-law going to open a studio? Can you sign Xiaoguo in there? Xiaoguo won't be cheated by the management company. This was also one of the reasons why Guozi had not considered those film companies before. Yang Yi took it as Yang Huan's provocation. He frowned and scolded. Don't mess around. Guozi has his own choice. Don't give him any advice. Besides, Murphy and my studio is specially set up for Murphy. How can we afford to sign others? Take Guozi, for example. He wants to film a movie. If he has a powerful management company, they can give him more support. That was awkward. Yang Yi's intention was very clear. In the future, the studio called Fei EC would be dedicated to serving Mo Fei. Even Yang Yi would only be helping Mo Fei write songs. Even the position of music producer had been prepared for Jin Yingming, who had been invited over. Murphy was the only artist in the whole studio. Yang Huan wasn't convinced. She said, But if I make my debut in the future, will you sit back and do nothing? What if I'm fooled by those scammers? It's still early for you to make your debut. When it's your turn, we'll help you slowly choose. You don't have any experience now, do you? If you want to talk about singing, I can recommend you and Xiaoguo. Tianxiang Records in Harbor City is good. It's the big company that Chen Yijia works for. They also do business in the mainland. But when it comes to acting, let alone me, even your sister-in-law will be at a loss. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That was the truth. It's okay. I'm not in a hurry. We'll see. Guozi was worried that the siblings would argue, so he waved his hand and said. At this moment, Cece ran out of the bathroom. The little girl had just washed her hands and washed away the mud on her water shoes. She slid out of the bathroom in her water shoes with a squeak. Shishi, you didn't wipe your shoes clean. You stepped on the water on the floor. Your daddy will spank you later. Murphy's voice came from the bathroom. Hehehehe. The little girl didn't care so much. She smiled mischievously and ran to the bar. It's okay. I'll wipe it. Ding Xiang said quickly. Sister Ding Xiang, I'll do it. Yang Huan rushed to do it. Shishi climbed up her father's legs and into his arms. Daddy's hands are dirty. Be careful. Yang Yi could only protect his daughter with his palms and arms, for fear that she would fall. Cece naughtily stuffed her still wet little hands into her father's neck, then giggled and said, Papa, look, isn't it cold? The water is so cold. Yang Yi knocked his daughter's head with his forehead and said, You're so naughty. You're freezing yourself, and now you're freezing your daddy. It's sharing. Shishi laughed so hard that she was convulsing. When she was done, she turned around and reached for the cookie on the plate. Ding Xiang served her a glass of freshly made milk and said with a smile, Milk with cookies is the most delicious. Shouldn't you say something? Yang Yi reminded the little girl who was busy eating. Thank you, Sister Ding Xiang. The little girl's mouth was full, so she could only say vaguely. Guozi wasn't affected at all. He pitifully said to Ding Xiang, I want to eat too. Everyone has a share. Ding Xiang rolled her eyes at him, annoyed and amused. Then she poured him a glass of milk as well. I mean cookies. Guozi shouted. Then you have to ask Shishi. Ding Xiang laughed. Shishi blinked her big eyes. Before Guozi could say anything, she took a piece and handed it to him. Uncle Guo, you should eat too. Hee, Shishi is still the best. Guozi said happily. At this moment, Murphy came out of the bathroom. Yang Huan had taken the opportunity to complain to her when she was wiping the floor and getting a mop. Huan Huan just told me that Xiaoguo wants to join our studio. Murphy sat beside Yang Yi. She smiled at Ding Xiang, who brought her milk, and then said to Yang Yi, I don't think it's a big deal. It's so fun to work hard towards our dreams together. Yang Yi said with a bit of hesitation. But this studio is for you. Besides, there are only a few people in our studio, and Mo Xiaowan is the only agent. How can we be so busy? He was still a little confused. Murphy knew Yang Yi better and knew what he was thinking. She laughed. That's easy to solve. You can open another management company and sign contracts with like-minded friends. Then our studio will be affiliated with this company. It doesn't matter if we make money or not, as long as we can do what we like together. Isn't that enough? Since Yang Yi wanted the studio to belong to the two of them, they would keep the studio and start a company outside of it. Murphy was indeed a little presumptuous, but it wasn't impossible. As long as there was no profit, it wouldn't hurt their relationship. As for the agent, that's easy. Xiaowan wants to learn from Sister Ling. Of course, it's not because she's bad, but because she wants to learn the management knowledge of a big company and the operation of a management company. In the future, I'll change my agent and train a new one. If Xiao Gua and Huan Huan come, we can train more agents and let them grow together with Xiao Gua and Huan Huan. Mo Fei even pointed at Ding Xiang with a smile and said, I think Ding Xiang is very suitable to be an agent. She is such a nice person and knows how to take care of people. Xiao Gua is careless and needs Ding Xiang to take care of him. These words stunned Yang Yi and Guizi. Ding Xiang blushed and waved her hand. How can that be? I'm not cut out to be an agent. Chapter 423. Ding Xiang didn't expect that she would be dragged into the water without doing anything. She thought that Murphy was joking and said embarrassedly, I know nothing about the entertainment industry. I can't be a manager. Mo Fei smiled and said, Didn't you major in electronic media? You already have a professional background. Moreover, who knows the entertainment industry like the back of their hand from the beginning? The company will also train you. My cousin, Xiaowan, came back from abroad and was also blinded. Didn't she have to practice for a few years before she could do it well? I think it's a good idea, Guizi said excitedly. Sister Ding Xiang, if you become my manager, I promise that I won't treat you badly. I'll treat you well every day. It's you who wants to eat and drink well every day, right? Yang Huan held Ding Xiang's hand and snorted. You want our sister Ding Xiang to be your cook? Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Yang Yi reacted at this time and couldn't help but laugh. Hey, you guys want to kidnap the #1 waitress in our shop with just a few words? What about our coffee shop? It's just talk now. It depends on Ding Xiang's wishes. But you can't always let her be a waitress. Ding Xiang also needs space to develop, Murphy said. The adults' heated discussion didn't affect Shishi at all. The little girl was eating her bare biscuits with relish. There was milk foam on her mouth and biscuit crumbs on the front of her blue jeans. Ugh. The little girl burped loudly. She couldn't help but smile at the noise. She felt that it was very fun. You ate so much? Yang Yi only noticed it at this time and said in surprise, You can't eat any more biscuits. You won't even want to eat lunch later. Yang Yi pulled her daughter's hand back, and Mo Fei also wiped her mouth with a tissue, and then let the little girl play on the side. Shishi didn't pester her, and asked for more biscuits. She had eaten 4 or 5 bare biscuits just now and was satisfied. Yang Yi and the others continued to talk about Murphy's proposal to open a new management company. For this, Murphy directly called Mo Xiaowan, and let her participate in the discussion. That's a good idea. Mo Xiaowan felt that she was going to be a big sister, and was very excited. She said, Actually, the staff of our studio is prepared according to the standards of a management company. In addition to recruiting and training a new batch of managers, we also have to. But for now, Xiaogua, you're the only one. With the current size of the company, we can take care of both sides. In the future, if you want to sign Huan Huan and Qianli Chuanshu, we can follow Tua Chang's team. Let's not talk about Qianli Chuanshu. I'm helping them because of fate. If they can successfully terminate their contracts, they can decide which company they want to sign with, Yang Yi argued. Then brother-in-law, you won't sit by and watch them jump from one fire pit to another, right? Mo Shaowan said with a smile. Let's not talk about them. Xiaogua, you should have signed a contract and debuted long ago. You already have a few songs. I remember that other than Fairy Tale, brother-in-law also wrote University Days for you. Many people online are clamoring for you to quickly release this song. Guazi helplessly emphasized again, Sister Shaowan, I'm an actor, not a singer. I'm not interested in being a singer. Then you can just release a single as a plaything. It's not like you're really going to be a singer. In the entertainment industry, it's not uncommon for actors to cross over to sing. Your main job is still acting. Mo Shaowan said with a smile. That's true. With that said, Guazi could accept it more. This matter was temporarily settled. After the discussion, the most enthusiastic one was Mo Shaowan. She excitedly prepared to register a new company. The company's name was already set. It was called Yang Yi Brothers, which was the abbreviation of Yang Yi and his brother's company. Because of this matter, Mo Shaowan didn't have the time to complain about Mo Fei acting on her own initiative and laying her cards on the table with Sister Ling. However, at this time, Zhu Jie was working hard to turn Murphy's bad move into a good one. In Zhu Jie's villa, Zhu Jie's father, who had just returned from Australia, was eating and chatting with Niu Meiling. Zhu Jie's father was called Zhu Jingwei. He was the chairman of the leading company in the domestic food industry, Jingwei Group. Jingwei Group was similar to Waha in his previous life. They had a high market share in the beverage industry. Of course, Zhu Jie was not his only son, so Zhu Jie could not inherit the tens of billions of assets by himself. Zhu Jingwei had 6 children and 5 sons. Zhu Jie was the second oldest. The other children all held important positions in Jingwei Group. Normally, they would fight openly and secretly, giving Zhu Jingwei a headache. Zhu Jie, on the other hand, had his own goals and did not fight. Zhu Jingwei liked him very much. Xiao Jie's performance has been pretty good recently. Although the song Mistress caused quite a bit of controversy in the entertainment industry. Controversy means hype and popularity. Now Xiao Jie is famous all over the country. He's very promising, Niu Meiling said with a smile. You should put in more effort on his side. If he can make a name for himself, the family will be happy to see it. In the future, I will leave Tianmei's shares to him. Zhu Jingwei nodded at Niu Meiling. But I heard from Xiao Jie that your company has a female celebrity who wants to go her own way. What's her name? Niu Meiling quickly said, Murphy. She wants to leave the company and open her own studio. I'm sorry, Jingwei, but Murphy is our company's current signboard. Her departure will indeed bring a huge loss to our company. Sister Mo Fei opened her own studio because she wanted to open a husband and wife store with her husband, Mu Xiang, who wrote songs for me. Zhu Jie, who was on the side, quickly explained. It's understandable. Those outsiders can do whatever they want. If they have to go through the procedures, then go through the procedures. If they have to pay according to the contract, then pay according to the contract. It's not a big deal. Even if it's a loss, I don't care about it. The most important thing is that you have to support Xiao Jie with more resources. I heard that you didn't help him get a song for an album? Zhu Jingwei said with dissatisfaction. Niu Meiling nodded with a bitter smile and said, I understand. I will give him more resources in the future. That's right. Now that Murphy is gone, you have more energy to nurture Xiao Jie. I think this is a good thing. Xiao Jie also told me about your thoughts. There's no need to find trouble with her. How big is it? Zhu Jingwei smiled. And Mu Zi also told me that he will continue to write songs for me, so we can't fall out with him. So auntie, you can't leak Mo Fei's photos out. Zhu Jie struck while the iron was hot and said. Niu Meiling fell into silence. She actually still had some anger in her heart that she couldn't vent. Xiao Jie has also grown up over the years. It's right for him to have such thoughts. Meiling, let me tell you, doing business is the same as being a person. You can't offend everyone in a moment of anger. In this day and age, it's better to have one more friend than one more enemy. If she wants to leave, just let her go. Her man will write songs for Xiao Jie. In the end, it's not like we don't have any benefits. Zhu Jingwei persuaded. Niu Meiling could ignore Zhu Jie, but Zhu Jingwei's position was extraordinary. She had to listen to his words and accept them respectfully. I understand. Jingwei, I won't find trouble with her. I'll listen to you and leave a way out. Niu Meiling sighed. Chapter 424. Time quietly entered March. The continuous spring rain began to invade this small city in Jiangnan, bringing about many inconveniences for people to travel. However, the drizzle in the air like willow catkins also added a bit of charm to the mountains and rivers in front and behind the coffee shop. Yang Yi came back from outside. In the car, he saw Murphy holding an oil paper umbrella in the flower bed, busily covering the delicate flower seedlings with plastic film. Of course, Yang Huan and Lin Mu, and were also wearing raincoats to help. Ding Xiang had classes on Monday morning. However, Yang Yi saw his wife in the crowd. The flowers had not bloomed yet, but the people here were more beautiful than the flowers. Perhaps it was because of this oil paper umbrella, or perhaps it was because of Mo Fei's graceful figure in the rain. Yang Yi actually thought of the beautiful modern poem Rainy Lane in his previous life. It was about the girl who held an oil paper umbrella, lost in her thoughts, and was full of sorrow and resentment. Of course, Murphy did not bear any grievances. She raised her head and saw Yang Yi coming out of the car. She waved happily and said, Yang Yi, come here. Help us pull the corner over there. Yang Yi smiled, walked over, and helped them. Back upstairs, Yang Yi helped Murphy take the umbrella to the balcony to hang it up. Murphy changed into her pajamas and ran to Yang Yi with a soft dry towel. Help me dry my hair. Mo Fei handed the towel over, and looked at Yang Yi with sparkling eyes that were like gems. She smiled and said, in fact, she could dry her hair herself, but after confirming her relationship with Yang Yi, Murphy liked the feeling of the two of them sticking together. Yang Yi thought for a moment as he dried Murphy's hair. He said to her, you can go to the company tomorrow without worry. The matter has been solved. What? Murphy did not react. I've already gotten someone to work on Niu Meiling's mentality. She can calmly face your departure. Although she can't be completely relieved, at least she won't be as emotional as before. Yang Yi said gently. Really? Murphy turned her head in surprise and looked at Yang Yi. Yeah. I think it's rare that we can part on good terms. Yang Yi smiled. That's enough. I don't expect Sister Ling to treat me like before. I just hope that we don't become enemies. In the future, when we meet, we can still nod and say hello. That's enough. Mo Fei said gratefully. Thank you, hubby. Murphy turned around and hugged Yang Yi with tears in her eyes. Mo Fei didn't ask what method Yang Yi used. She was still a little smart in this regard. She knew that Yang Yi would tell her what he could, but if she asked what he couldn't say, it would only bring trouble to Yang Yi. Fool. Why are you thanking me? Isn't your matter my matter? Yang Yi smiled and gently patted Murphy's head. After comforting Mo Fei, who was a little emotional, Yang Yi came to the study and took out a USB flash drive from his pocket. Yang Yi stared at the USB and played with it for a while. He shook his head and placed it in a secret compartment on his bookshelf. Back in the morning after Yang Yi sent Shishi to kindergarten, he went to the old place to meet Zhu Jie. Zhu Jie proudly told Yang Yi about his achievements, as if he was asking for credit. No, he was asking for credit. He even inserted the USB flash drive that Niu Meiling had given to Jian Chua into his laptop, and showed him the scandalous information that he had painstakingly obtained. Boss Mu Xiang, this information alone is worth 500,000. Not to mention that my dad later gave my aunt some financial compensation. Zhu Jie waved his hand and said with a smile, but this is nothing. Anything that can be settled with money is nothing. Boss, my performance this time was good, right? Of course, Yang Yi was very satisfied. Reward? What reward? Of course it was not money. Zhu Jie was not short of money. Yang Yi gave the complete score and lyrics of that night to Zhu Jie. However, for the second song, Yang Yi only sang it once. He kept the score and lyrics for the time being. It is useless to give this song to you now. With your current singing skills, you can't control this song. If you give it to me, you will ruin it. Yang Yi said to Zhu Jie calmly. Zhu Jie liked the second song very much. Not only did the lyrics express sadness, which was similar to that night, but it was even better. More importantly, this song had a moving melody. It was unforgettable from beginning to end. It could be said that it was a climax from beginning to end, and it was irresistible. Yang Yi had used his hoarse voice to perform the song vividly. Zhu Jie, who was listening at the side, was so infatuated that he couldn't help but want to shout along. But Zhu Jie also understood that Boss Muxiang was right. This song was not something that he could control. He shouted along the whole song, and Zhu Jie couldn't even catch his breath. What should I do? Zhu Jie said with a sad face. Boss Muxiang, you can't not give this song to me. I feel that this song is tailor-made for me. Tailor-made? Yang Yi actually wanted to beat this joker to death, but he held it in. This guy was sometimes a little scoundrel and a little silly, but he was still useful at crucial times. Moreover, Yang Yi also thought that cultivating Zhu Jie was a very interesting thing. He wanted to see what Zhu Jie, this little white mouse, could achieve with the help of divine songs. Don't worry. As long as Murphy can leave Tianmei as usual, I will still give you this song. I Muxiang, never go back on my words. Moreover, this is not the only time we are working together, Yang Yi said with a faint smile. Oh yeah, releasing these two songs separately is good for you. It can maintain the popularity for a long time. I suggest that from today onwards, you learn how to sing properly. When I give it to you, you will be able to sing it. Moreover, if you have some singing skills, I won't have to worry about you ruining my work if I have any songs for you in the future. Zhu Jie was a very impatient person. He couldn't listen to other people's nagging, especially when they advised him to learn how to sing. In the past, Du Luan was very tactful. When he saw that Zhu Jie was unhappy, he wouldn't mention it again. But now, Boss Muxiang's instructions, no matter how angry Zhu Jie was, he had to listen to him. Moreover, he really wanted to sing the second song. Just thinking about it made his heart itch. Moreover, when he thought about how he could sing this song on stage, and how the fans below the stage would be mesmerized and cheered, Zhu Jie became excited. He clenched his teeth and said, Okay, Boss Muxiang, I will learn. When I go back, I will ask my aunt to find me a music teacher. I don't believe that I can't sing this song well. Chapter 425. Hello, your Sahara Express has arrived, please sign for it. At noon, a delivery man wearing a red Sahara Express jacket, black pants, and a red motorcycle helmet knocked on the door. Mu Yuqing, who had specially taken a day off to stay at home, finally received the package he had been looking forward to for a long time. Thank you. Mu Yuqing took the pen and signed on the express receipt while smiling and saying, You guys are doing well now, you even have clothes. The Sahara Express courier smiled shyly, nodded and said, Yes, the company issued new clothes a week ago. From now on, you have to wear this set to work. Just one set. Wear this 365 days a year? Mu Yuqing caught the loophole in the courier's words and laughed. No, 3 sets, this is winter clothes, and there are 3 sets of summer clothes. The courier quickly explained. Haha, I'm just kidding. Actually, I also read about your Sahara Express in the newspaper. It seems that there's a new boss, and everything is different now. Look at your spirit, it's improved a lot. You suddenly pulled away from other express deliveries. Mu Yuqing took the express box and gave the courier a thumbs up. After the Spring Festival, Sahara Online Mall announced a new appointment. Fu Jun would no longer be the CEO of Sahara Express, and the position of the person in charge of Sahara Express would be taken over by Li Long. Of course, Fu Jun was still Li Long's boss, and Li Long needed to report his work to Fu Jun. The name Li Long was still unfamiliar in China. However, his resume abroad was very exciting. Before he took over Sahara Express, he had worked for DNL, a famous international logistics company in the German Federation, for 10 years. Then, he became the head of the European branch of FEX International Express for 5 years. These 2 express delivery companies were giants in the express delivery industry. Of course, the domestic express delivery market was special and blocked. Although they also had business in China, the scale was far less than the several state-run express delivery companies in China. Of course, there was no need to go so far. Li Long was also an elite among the sea turtles. After being recruited by Sahara Express, he immediately transformed Sahara Express. It was also because the Sahara Express was young and energetic, coupled with Fu Jun's trust and support, that Li Long's philosophy could be instilled. First, the construction of the team. As Yang Yi had proposed before, Sahara Express bought or eliminated all the miscellaneous troops that joined the team one by one. They also trained all the express delivery personnel in batches, strengthened discipline, and improved service attitude. This was the main reason why Sahara Express customer satisfaction rating gradually increased after the new year. Then there was the establishment and maintenance of the brand. For example, the uniform clothing that Mu Yuqing saw now, and even the uniform change of transportation, etc. Of course, this required a large amount of investment. Even with Fu Jun's support, it was impossible to complete all the upgrades at once. Currently, only the uniform clothing had been changed. As for the transportation, it still needed to be upgraded gradually and in batches. Li Long was using advanced foreign concepts to bring the Sahara Express to a whole new level. Of course, Mu Yuqing wasn't interested in knowing more. He had only seen it in the newspaper and casually chatted with the delivery man. After the delivery man left, Mu Yuqing couldn't wait to close the door, open the box, and take out the book that he had been waiting for half a month. Journey by White Knight. Like the other one. 2 million fans who participated in the pre-order, Mu Yuqing was very curious about the content of this book. The cover was already very familiar, so there was no need to look at it again. Tearing the plastic film outside, Mu Yuqing opened it directly. The style of this book was very strange. There were no colored pages, and the overall color was either black or white. It was very strange. There was no table of contents. Turning to the second page, there was a line of small words, Chapter 1, which uncovered the first layer of fog of the story. However, Mu Yuqing was a little dumbfounded. He found that he did not understand the first chapter. It seemed to be about a police officer who walked into a crime scene to investigate, but the story was very detailed. It even included some trivial things like buying grilled shrimp pancakes before walking into the crime scene. Mu Yuqing was baffled by the dialogue, such as, "The building has become a children's playground." Later, the dialogue at the crime scene also confused Mu Yuqing, such as, "The victim was killed after eating." "The holes in the belt were looser than usual," and so on. Were these clues given by Yang Yi? Let us guess who the murderer is? Perhaps a real mystery novel fan would be able to find some clues, but Mu Yuqing was not at that level. He was not a real mystery novel fan, so he could only guess blindly. I think it should be the victim's wife. Her behavior was too strange. Even the police officer could tell that she was faking it. Mu Yuqing muttered to himself. However, he found a problem. This was a physical book, not a web novel. Even if he had some thoughts now, there was no book review section for him to display. Wait a minute. It wasn't that there weren't any. Mu Yuqing excitedly logged into his SNS account and asked in a fan's Prison Break reader group, "Who's reading Yang Yi's new book, Journey in the White Knight? Come and discuss it." What? Yang Yi released a new book? Why didn't I see it on the starting page? Mu Yuqing had no choice but to tell the other party the distribution address of White Knight Parade and send the link over. However, if the order was placed now, it would probably take 2 or 3 days for the goods to arrive. This was only possible because of the Sahara Express. Old Mu, you're not being kind. Why didn't you share the good stuff earlier? You're only saying it now. Mu Yuqing's online username Mu Yuchen was quite famous among Yang Yi's fans. His conversation with the netizens still blew up a lot of lurkers. They all started to blame Mu Yuqing and started to call their friends to go to the Sahara Online Mall to buy books. "Old Mu, I also bought White Knight. I just got it and I can't stop reading it. Come, let's discuss it quickly. I want to find someone to talk to." Finally, someone bought the book. With the first, there would be a second. Not long after, about 20 netizens who bought the book responded. However, in order to prevent them from spoiling the story in advance, under the strong request of the angry crowd, Mu Yuqing hurriedly created a small group and pulled the 20 or so people into it. Then, everyone began to discuss from the first chapter. Those who read quickly were not allowed to spoil the story. However, after Mu Yuqing raised his point of view, a senior mystery novel reader smiled and told Mu Yuqing, "Old Mu, let me tell you, the murderer can't be the wife of the deceased. According to normal mystery novels, the more suspicious the suspect is at the beginning, the less likely it is to be the murderer. The real murderer is usually the most inconspicuous and least likely one," the other party said proudly. "Then who do you think it is? It can't be Officer Chow, right?" Mu Yuqing said unhappily. "He's the least likely murderer." "I can't guess that either. Don't you think that the deceased's family in the story is very depressing? His mother acted very strangely, and then the boy named Tong Shuoyang was a little boy with the dark element. Could it be that his mother had an affair with the shop assistant with the surname Song? And then the shop assistant with the surname Song, and his mother killed his father? Because Tong Shuoyang found out about this, he acted so depressed?" A netizen expressed his opinion. "That's possible." Mu Yuqing felt that the possibility was very high. "That's impossible. That person with the surname Song appeared too many times in the book. His behavior is too suspicious. Unless Yang Yi's brain is damaged, it's impossible for him to reveal the murderer so quickly," the senior mystery novel reader retorted. "Then how do you explain Tong Shuoyang's mother's strange behavior?" the netizen said unhappily. The other netizens also took sides and expressed their opinions, but no one could convince anyone. "Let's stop arguing. Let's read the next chapter together, okay? I really want to know who the murderer is." Mu Yuqing could only stop them. This suggestion was unanimously approved by everyone. Chapter 426. However, when they started to read the second chapter together, suspicions rose again. A woman suspected to be the victim's mistress surfaced. This woman was called Shi Wendai, and she had a very cute and beautiful daughter called Shi Xuehue. Shi Xuehue was Shi Wendai's daughter with her ex-husband, and she took her mother's surname. Shi Xuehue was so sensible that it made one's heart ache. But her mother was not very reliable. Officer Chow's investigation gave Shi Wendai a motive for the murder, but Shi Wendai had an alibi. However, at this time, another driver appeared in the investigation, and the character was actually Shi Wendai's boyfriend. Could it be that he and Shi Wendai worked together to kill the victim? That must be the case. After reading the second chapter, Mu Yuqing felt that he was very close to the truth. However, at this time, Mu Yuqing did not want to immediately discuss it with the netizens. He hesitated for a moment, then flipped to the third chapter. "I'll just take a look. If I know who the murderer is, I won't look anymore." Mu Yuqing decided to secretly break their promise, but he did not know that the same situation was happening to the other netizens. However, this one look made Mu Yuqing vomit blood. F***ck. Mu Yuqing could not help but exclaim on SNS. Someone replied faintly, "Old Mu, did you secretly read the third chapter? How did you know?" Mu Yuqing's face turned red. "Because I read it too." That person replied with a crying laughing emoji. There was a large group of resentful netizens who agreed. "I read it too, +1. I also want to say F***ck. Counting, all of them had gone back on their word. Mu Yuqing was happy, and he quickly typed, "Since everyone has read a little of the third chapter, let's discuss it. Since the driver is dead, could it be Shi Wendai? She wants to silence him." However, no one agreed with him. The netizen who asked him just now replied, "Old Mu, you only read a little of the third chapter?" "Yes." Mu Yuqing replied matter-of-factly. "Old Mu, you're reading too slowly. Hurry up and finish the third chapter. After I finish reading it, I don't think what you said is possible anymore." In order not to reveal any spoilers, the other party had carefully typed this sentence word by word. Mu Yuqing replied with 6 dots. He quickly turned off the computer screen and continued reading seriously. Mu Yuqing read this book very slowly. It was even slower than when he read online novels and other physical books. It was no wonder that his teammates complained about him. Of course, this was all Yang Yi's fault, who asked him to write so much. It took Mu Yuqing so much effort to read it the first time, and he had to be very serious. In the future, he might have to read it a second or third time. He felt that there were many details that he could not grasp. However, after reading the third chapter, Mu Yuqing really wanted to say, F***ck. Shi Wendai was also dead. She died of gas poisoning. All the evidence pointed to Shi Wendai committing suicide. However, Mu Yuqing's mind was in a mess. He couldn't help but turn on his computer screen and log on to SNS to discuss with the netizens. Shi Wendai didn't commit suicide, right? Why do I feel like Shi Xuehui killed her? Mu Yuqing asked. I think it's possible. Yang Yi's description here is too obvious. Shi Xuehui asked the apartment manager to open the door. This alibi is too obvious. A netizen sighed and said, but I think it's hard to accept. Shi Xuehui is such a sensible and cute little girl. How could she kill her mother whom she depended on for survival? Mu Yuqing hammered on the table and typed furiously. Maybe she found out about her mother's crime? The netizen replied with an answer that even he found hard to believe. That doesn't make sense. Mu Yuqing obviously didn't agree. At this moment, other people also participated in the discussion. There were different opinions, but no one could convince anyone. At this moment, the senior mystery novel reader from before appeared and interrupted. Whether it's because Shi Xuehui was dissatisfied with her mother's decadent lifestyle, or because Shi Xuehui resented her mother's abuse, it's an irrefutable fact that Shi Xuehui killed her mother. This affirmative tone aroused the doubts of many netizens, who asked him to provide evidence. Turn to page 49, the third paragraph. Do you see it? Every time she moved, a jingling sound came from her body. Then the second paragraph on the next page. She nodded slightly, and a jingling sound came from her body. Do you know what that is? The senior mystery novel reader provided evidence and proudly kept them in suspense. What is that? Mu Yuqing was very curious. It must be the key. It should be the sound of keys colliding. She has a key on her body. The netizen said. How is that possible? That's not the sound of keys colliding. Many people expressed their doubts. However, these were not important. Mu Yuqing flipped to the last few pages of the third chapter and confirmed that Shi Xuehui was a suspect. After all, the article was written too obviously. The dead person shouldn't be the murderer. The murderer must still be alive. Could the murderer be Shi Xuehui? The senior mystery novel reader asked. How is that possible? How could a girl the size of a primary school student kill a strong adult? Wouldn't Tong Shuoyang's father resist? Many netizens strongly refuted. Also, I don't think it's possible that Shi Xuehui killed her mother. The only possibility is that her mother and the driver worked together to kill the deceased. Then, her mother killed the driver and committed suicide to escape punishment. She didn't want to bring trouble to her daughter. Was that really the case? Mu Yuqing couldn't help but want to read the next chapter. He really wanted to know who the murderer was. However, when he flipped to the next chapter, Mu Yuqing exclaimed, F***ck. In the next chapter, the story had jumped to a few years later. Shi Xuehui was already a junior high school student. No, she should be called Tang Xuehui now. She was adopted by her biological father's relative and changed her surname. And the previous case had become an unsolved case. Did it have to be so bad? Mu Yuqing sighed. He thought of Yang Yi's prison break. Although the style was completely different and Yang Yi had made a lot of changes, he could still see a trace of Yang Yi's shadow in the details. Every time the truth came to light, he would not let the readers have a good time. Gradually, there was no discussion in the discussion group because everyone was immersed in Yang Yi's story. Mu Yuqing didn't have time to talk about the plot. He continued to read chapter by chapter. When his stomach was growling at night, he remembered to order takeout. But when the takeout arrived, he casually took a few bites and continued to read. For this book, he forgot to eat and sleep. He only reached the last page in the middle of the night. In the end, he saw Tong Shuoyang jump upstairs without hesitation. He saw Tong Shuoyang insert the weapon that Officer Chow couldn't find in his chest, scissors. He saw Tang Xuehui walk away as if she didn't know Tong Shuoyang at all under Officer Chow's interrogation. Suddenly, Mu Yuqing burst into tears. His originally bloodshot eyes were covered with tears, and he could no longer see the words in the book clearly. Actually, in the middle of the book, Mu Yuqing had already identified the culprit. However, It wasn't until the last few chapters that Mu Yuqing understood the cause of everything. It was actually so dirty that it changed the future of two originally innocent and unaffected children. He also thought of the silhouette of a boy and a girl on the front and back of the book, as well as the sentence, "I never had the sun, so I'm not afraid of losing it." It turned out that Yang Yi had already told them the answer, but they had forgotten it. When his tears stopped flowing, Mu Yuqing realized that he still had lingering fears. Actually, he didn't like the two main characters at all, because Tong Shuoyang and Tang Xuehui were too dark. Their way of doing things was disgusting and terrifying. But Mu Yuqing couldn't help but sigh. In the whole story, as the murderers, they were indeed the victims. At the same time, Mu Yuqing was also touched by the abnormal love between Tong Shuoyang and Tang Xuehui. No matter what, they gave their hearts and souls to each other, and it was great. On the last page of the book, Yang Yi finally left a sentence of his own in the book. Due to the complexity of the human heart in today's society, children lack self-protection awareness and anti-aggression education. I hope that this book can sound the alarm to protect children from aggression, so that every child can have a carefree and sunny childhood. An ordinary father. Yang Yi has written a godly book. It's better than Prison Break, and all the books he has written before. Is this logic something that a human can come up with? Mu Yuqing finally remembered that this book was written by Yang Yi. At that moment, he was shocked and couldn't calm down for a long time. Looking back at the novels that Yang Yi had published from last year until now, Mu Yuqing realized that Yang Yi's standards were gradually rising, and each book was better than the last. I'm really looking forward to his next book. Mu Yuqing was a little reluctant to close the book. Although he was very tired, and reading this book was also a huge mental torture, Mu Yuqing was still in a daze. But when is Yang Yi going to do a signing? This guy is too mysterious, isn't he? It would be great if he could come to Yangcheng and do a signing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he looks like. Chapter 427. A few days after the release of White Knight, its sales figures were steadily rising due to pre-order readers' recommendations and Yang Yi's fan group's internal dissemination. However, it was worth mentioning that on the Sahara Online Mall's review page, it could be seen that the book was not a novel that everyone loved. The reviews were very polarized. Some gave it a very high rating. For example, many people sighed at Yang Yi's imagination and praised that the book would be a great work of mystery fiction. Others said that they could not read it at all because the book was too dark. The male and female protagonists were actually a little antisocial and anti-human. That was indeed the case. However, even the buyers who said that they could not read it rarely gave the book a low score. They still praised Yang Yi's writing skills and narrative ability. Not liking it was just a matter of personal preference. They did not deny the excellence of the book. Therefore, although the influence of the book had not yet been brewed, its Sahara rating was already high. It was not worse than the two popular works, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. However, today Sahara Publishing's deputy editor, Lu Benji, called Yang Yi. He did not talk about sales and reviews. Instead, he gave Yang Yi feedback on the recent readers' letters, saying that many readers hoped that Yang Yi would hold a signing event. The readers' curiosity about Yang Yi was bursting. I'm not holding a signing event. This is all an old matter. I don't like to show my face in public. Yang Yi still refused. Lu Benji was not very surprised. He had long known that Yang Yi would say that. Then he talked about the new initiatives of the publishing house. Yang Yi had neglected to take care of his fan group before, so the current fan group was in a scattered state. This was actually a huge waste of resources. Now that Sahara Publishing was fully responsible for Yang Yi's literary affairs, they decided to help him integrate his fans and form an official fan group in place of Yang Yi. In other words, they would open a separate communication community for Yang Yi, similar to Tieba, to gather people and discuss Yang Yi's works or related issues here. This way, if Yang Yi released a new book in the future, it could also be promoted together. That's a good idea. What do you need me to do? Yang Yi agreed. Boss, we need you to take some time to interact with netizens in this communication community. Then we will organize some activities. We may need you to provide some signed books, signed photos, and other rewards as support, Lu Benji said. Signed books are fine, but signed photos are out of the question, Yang Yi said, somewhat dumbfounded. I'm not a little girl. Why would I ask for autographed photos? This matter was settled just like that. After Yang Yi put away his phone, he smiled at Lan Hao Kai in front of him and said, I'm sorry, big brother Lan. Today Yang Yi was called out by Lan Hao Kai. The two of them were going to take a look at the fitness center where Chen Shiyun's father, Chen Guoqiang, was at. Last time, after climbing down the mountain, Lan Hao Kai asked Chen Guoqiang what kind of fitness method a fat person like him should choose if he wanted to lose weight and maintain his health. Chen Guoqiang recommended boxing to Lan Hao Kai. It was not that he wanted to boast, but boxing had indeed become the first choice of fitness for many rich people. This was because if it was a non-competitive type of boxing, it was not as scary as everyone thought. Practicing boxing could not only increase one's strength and improve one's reflexes, it could also promote the overall healthy development of the body. One had to know that boxing was a sport that required the use of both hands and feet, as well as the use of the whole body and the use of the brain. It was far more muscular than running, bench pressing, and other sports. Furthermore, unlike yoga and dance, which were more feminine, boxing was very manly. Therefore, Lan Hao Kai's interest was piqued. He took some time out today to try out a boxing class. However, it would be too boring to play alone, so Lan Hao Kai dragged his good friend, Yang Yi, along. Because they were sitting in Lan Hao Kai's luxury car, everything Yang Yi said was heard by Lan Hao Kai. Lan Hao Kai gave a different opinion about Yang Yi's attitude. Little brother Yang, I think your attitude of not wanting to show your face in public is wrong. Lan Hao Kai poured a cup of iced yogurt drink for Yang Yi. These were all placed in the fridge of his luxury car. The back of the extended luxury car was like a small private room. Lan Hao Kai's fridge also had red wine and imported wine, but it was inconvenient to drink these today. What do you mean? Your wife is a big star, right? Although your relationship has not been made public, paper cannot cover the fire. There will be a day when the reporters will expose it. If you don't increase your fame now, when the public finds out, they will definitely think that you are living off a woman and not worthy of your wife. Lan Hao Kai and Yang Yi were straightforward and said without hiding anything. As long as two people have a deep relationship, they will not be affected by public opinion, Yang Yi said confidently. Moreover, we know our own situation. Why do we have to cater to the public's opinion? People are social animals. You live in this society, so it's impossible not to be affected. It's fine if a man is strong and a woman is weak, but if a man is weak and a woman is strong, men will always be laughed at. I don't know about Murphy, but when the time comes, I'm afraid you will be the first to suffer. Lan Hao Kai also saw Yang Yi as a brother, which was why he nagged so much. All right. Big brother Lan, I will seriously consider it and think of a way to solve it. Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand saying, We're almost there. We should get ready to get off. What's the point of talking about this? Lan Hao Kai did not know about Yang Yi's real situation, but Yang Yi himself knew. He was Mu Xiang, a famous author, a big boss with a net worth in the hundreds of millions, and a transmigrator reborn. What man is weak and woman is strong? It doesn't exist. The fitness center that Chen Guoqiang worked at was located in the bustling area of Tingshan district. Not only was it very close to the luxurious area where Lan Hao Kai and the others lived, but it was also very close to several large buildings in Tingshan district. It specialized in the business of the rich. Therefore, the scale of this fitness center was also very large. It had rented the second to sixth floors of a large building. Whether it was the normal fitness area or the areas for individual activities such as dance, yoga, and boxing, they all had their own separate floors. Chen Guoqiang came down to welcome them. He brought Lan Hao Kai and Yang Yi, as well as Lan Hao Kai's bodyguards, up to the boxing gym on the sixth floor. The entire floor was clear at a glance. There were no partitions, only fully equipped boxing rings. There were also some punching bags and pair balls for individual practice, as well as some simple back and arm training equipment. The main thing was still the boxing ring. There were many boxing trainers in the boxing gym, and the customers here were all people who could afford one-on-one private trainers. They trained directly on the boxing ring with the trainers. Not bad. Lance Haokai looked around and nodded in satisfaction. Yang Yi glanced at him and laughed in his heart. This guy probably saw that the equipment here was relatively new, so he made this judgment. After all, he was a visual animal. Yang Yi was more observant. He took a few glances and could see that the boxing trainers here were of different standards. Some were like Chen Guoqiang, who had some real skills and had participated in competitions. Some were probably rookies who had trained with trainers for 2 years, or had been sparring partners for others, and then applied to be trainers. Of course, in normal teaching, the average person would not be able to tell the difference in their standards, and they would not show the students actual combat. Chapter 428. However, Yang Yi did not want to stop others from making money. Anyway, they had Chen Guoqiang's connections. When the time came, he could just ask him to help pick a good coach. Today's experience class was taught by Chen Guoqiang personally. Lance Haokai still showed a strong interest. He even bought a set of boxing clothes, took the bag from the bodyguard, and went to the changing room. Yang Yi, aren't you going to change? Chen Guoqiang asked with a smile while waiting for Lance Haokai. Yang Yi shook his head, smiled, and pointed at his inconspicuous sportswear. He said, "This is fine too. It's just an experience." After a while, Lance Haokai came out of the changing room with a strong aura. He was like a real boxer, wearing red trousers, a red battle robe, and a hoodie. "Come on!" Lance Haokai shouted excitedly as he bumped his fists. However, Lance Haokai did not buy all the equipment for the first time, such as boxing gloves, headgear, and so on. He temporarily borrowed the boxing club's boxing gloves. He did not need the headgear because it was not time for actual combat. Chen Guoqiang taught him to put it on. Yang Yi also put on a pair of boxing gloves. After getting on the boxing ring, Lance Haokai took off his battle robe and handed it to the bodyguard below the ring. As soon as he turned around, Lance Haokai was shivering from the cold. As expected, he could not be handsome for more than 3 seconds. The temperature in spring was still a little low. Lance Haokai was only wearing a singlet boxing suit. His arms were exposed and his white fat jiggled. However, such a thick layer of fat didn't have any protection against the cold. "Come, do a warm-up exercise with me first. After you're done, your body will be warmed up, and you won't feel cold." Chen Guoqiang was experienced. He immediately led Lance Haokai to do a warm-up exercise. Yang Yi was at the side. He didn't put on airs. Since he was here to accompany Lance Haokai to experience the game, he also treated himself as a newbie and obediently followed along to warm up. Head movements, shoulder movements, and elbow movements were considered simple. However, when it came to the front and back leg movements, as well as the side leg movements, Lance Haokai couldn't do it anymore. He forced himself to bend his knees, but after he opened his legs a little, he could not sink any further. His chubby elephant legs were trembling with all their might. Finally, he could not hold on any longer, and sat back down on the boxing ring. No, this is too difficult for me." Lance Haokai waved his hand, but he still looked enviously at Yang Yi, who was bending down effortlessly. "I can't learn it. It had such good flexibility." Chen Guoqiang still had a way. He got out of the boxing ring and took a few skipping ropes. He smiled and said, "Old Lon, you should have no problem skipping ropes, right? Of course, I didn't ask you to skip a lot. 10 in one set. After you finish one set, take a breather, and do the next set. A total of 3 sets. Can you do it?" Skipping ropes was still a problem for Lance Haokai. After all, his body and weight were there. That was why Chen Guoqiang gave him such a low requirement, and even helped him make the skipping rope the largest length possible. "I'll try." Lance Haokai gritted his teeth and took the skipping rope. "I don't need it." Yang Yi waved his hand at Chen Guoqiang, who also handed him a skipping rope. Yang Yi knew that skipping rope was the best warm-up exercise, but he didn't want to stimulate Lance Haokai too much. This time, he came to the fitness center to accompany Lance Haokai to try out boxing and help him lose weight. He wasn't here to be competitive and destroy Lance Haokai's confidence. Lance Haokai's wrist flicked the skipping rope, and then he jumped up with all his might. He didn't jump high, but he jumped over the skipping rope that was thrown to his feet. The timing was good. However, in the next second, when Lan's Haokai landed, Yang Yi and Chen Guoqiang felt the whole boxing ring shake. Bang! They didn't know if there was a hole in the boxing ring, but it felt like the ground was shaking. The earthquakes and mountain sway appeared a total of 10 times. Lan's Haokai's perseverance was not bad. He actually managed to persevere. Although he was panting in the end and his legs went soft, he still managed to complete a set of skipping rope. Very good, old Lan. Come take a break. Let's do another set. Chen Guoqiang clapped. I can't. Lan's Haokai shook his head and said while panting, one more set. I'm afraid I'll have to go back lying down today. Wait for me to take a break. I'll go straight to boxing. Yang Yi looked at Lan's Haokai's condition and smiled at Chen Guoqiang. Take it slow. Brother Lan hasn't trained in a long time. He can't train too hard on his first try. Lan's Haokai took a long time to catch his breath. The three of them chatted for a while about Chen Guoqiang's current work situation. For example, they found out that Chen Guoqiang wasn't just a boxing coach, but also the director of teaching at the boxing gym. Of course, the so-called director of teaching was also a modern title. Using the title of head instructor would be more appropriate. After Lan's Haokai recovered, Chen Guoqiang taught them boxing. Lan's Haokai was a rookie, and Lan's Haokai didn't understand complicated movements. Chen Guoqiang started teaching Lan's Haokai simple left and right punches. Chen Guoqiang was even afraid that Lan's Haokai wouldn't be able to accept so much at once, so he only taught Lan's Haokai hand movements and footwork. He didn't instruct him for the time being, and let him move according to his own habits. However, Lan's Haokai was in high spirits. Perhaps all men had a warm-blooded heart. Lan's Haokai waved his gloved fists and punched the target held by Chen Guoqiang. His face was full of excitement, and he forgot about his fatigue. When you punch, don't be too hasty. Slow down. Look at the target before you punch. Remember your movements. Even if you punch, you have to place your fist beside your cheek in a defensive posture. After you punch, remember not to be greedy. Pull back your fist and return to your original posture. Chen Guoqiang corrected Lan's Haokai's mistakes as he let him punch. Lan's Haokai learned pretty well, but he didn't forget about Yang Yi. After practicing for a while, he waved his hand and asked Yang Yi to try. Don't always let me play alone. You come and practice too. Let me tell you, when the time comes, you can also apply for a membership. Let's work out together and fight for our health. Lan's Haokai laughed. Yang Yi laughed. He didn't refuse and took over Lan's Haokai's position. Then, according to Chen Guoqiang's instructions, he casually threw a set of 4 punches left and right. Finally, he pulled back his fist beside his cheek and got into a ready posture. There was nothing strange about the movements. It was the same as what Chen Guoqiang taught him. The speed of the punches wasn't fast, and most of the strength was restrained. Yang Yi came to play with his friends. He didn't want to show off, so his performance was normal. But no matter how normal it was, Chen Guoqiang could still see the difference. Yang Yi's learning was too standard. He curiously asked, Yang Yi, have you learned boxing before? Nope. Yang Yi shook his head. Lan's Haokai explained for him. Hey, boxing is nothing. You forgot, Brother Yang was in the army. He trained, so his skills are naturally extraordinary. Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. He didn't refute. This was just a small episode. Lan's Haokai practiced for a while, and his physical strength was almost exhausted. After all, he hadn't exercised for a long time, so he had to do it step by step. You have classes for children here? When he went to apply for a membership, Lan's Haokai passed by and saw a few boys and girls practicing boxing. Although their arms were weak, their postures were decent. Yes, my Shiryan will also come over this weekend. Chen Guoqiang laughed. Why? Old Lan, do you want your daughter to come and learn? Well, Lan Xian doesn't like to exercise. Her body is almost as big as mine. This won't do. I have to let her exercise too. Lan's Haokai was a little tempted, but he turned to look at Yang Yi. He smiled and said, Brother Yang, you should also bring your Shishi over. It will be more lively if a few girls play together. Yang Yi rolled his eyes and said angrily, You dragged me into this. Don't even think about my daughter. I don't want her to learn boxing. Why should a girl learn boxing? You can't say that. Many parents want their children to learn boxing not because they want them to become violent, but because they want them to strengthen their physique and learn a skill to protect themselves, especially girls. Chun Guoqiang quickly explained. I'm not asking Shishi to really practice boxing. I'm just asking her to come and play. Just treat boxing as a game. Anyway, they like to play together. What's the point of staying at home on the weekend? Lans Haokai persuaded Yang Yi. If it's just for fun, it doesn't matter if she comes a few times. Yang Yi hesitated and said, but I can't guarantee that Shishi will come every week. Sometimes she has to stay at home with her mother. That's natural. It depends on the child's wishes. Let me tell you, if you get a membership for Xionaire, I'm not sure how many times she can come and how many days she can stay popular. Lans Haokai said with a smile. Then get another membership for Shishi. Money was no longer important to them. What's more, Lans Haokai rushed to pay for Yang Yi's portion of the money. Chapter 429. This week, Yang Yi and Shishi could not go to the fitness center to play boxing with Lans Haokai and Lan Xian. Although Shishi was in high spirits after hearing the news, because Murphy's concert in Shanghai was going to start this Saturday, Yang Yi and Shishi had to go to Shanghai to support Murphy's concert. Because of this, Yang Yi also asked for 2 days leave for Shishi. On Thursday, he set off with Murphy. This guy was very bold. He directly drove Murphy to the hotel where she was staying, and he and Shishi booked a room on the other floor of the hotel. This is called darkness under the light. The more the entertainment reporters are guarding the place, the safer it is. Later, I'll swagger out of the hotel with Shishi. I'm sure no one will pay attention to us two ordinary people. Yang Yi raised his eyebrows and said proudly to Murphy, who had settled down in her room with Mo Xiaowan, and then secretly came to visit. Shishi, look, your father is bragging. The bull is about to explode from his bragging. Murphy couldn't help but laugh and pull her daughter along. Shishi believed it. She turned her head in confusion, looked around and said in confusion, where is the bull? This was really not bragging. Yang Yi was sure. In the afternoon, Yang Yi took Shishi out to play. They walked out of the hotel with a few reporters holding cameras. However, when they looked up at Yang Yi and found that they didn't know him, they continued to play with their phones and ignored them. Papa, why don't we take Mom to play with us? Shishi was in her father's arms. She looked around curiously and whispered in her father's ear. Yang Yi walked past a reporter with a normal expression and said calmly, because Mom has to work in the afternoon. We're here to accompany Mom, not to disturb her work, right? Shishi nodded sensibly. Yang Yi drove the car and shuttled through the streets of Shanghai with Cici. However, he wasn't driving around aimlessly. Before Yang Yi came, he had inquired about it from some netizens on a travel forum. The place he was going to take Cici to today was a very famous old street, Yuyuan Road. When they arrived after Yang Yi parked the car, he held Shishi's hand and pointed to a blue road sign with a white border. Yuyuan Road? Shishi first looked around curiously. Then she raised her little head and looked in the direction her father pointed. She repeated after him, but her pronunciation was not correct. It's Yuyuan Road. Yang Yi corrected his daughter's pronunciation with a smile. Okay. Shishi wasn't interested in this. She found a new world by herself. The little girl jumped and pulled her father's hand. She happily raised her head and said, Papa, let's go there and take a look. It's so strange. What's so strange? It turned out that what attracted Shishi's attention was a few old buildings. They were connected together like the walls of Tiananmen Square. However, they weren't as grand and seemed to have shrunk. Instead, a series of 7 arched teak doors were very eye-catching. Above them was a palace-like building. The yellow glazed roof tiles were like gold, plating these buildings with a layer of brilliant golden light. The heavy eaves, cornices, and arches all marked the rich history of these buildings. However, it wasn't a palace. This is Jing'an Temple. Yang Yi smiled and said to his daughter, Do you know what a temple means? What does it mean? Shishi opened her arms and asked her father to pick her up. The little girl was short. Blocked by the cars on the road, she couldn't see anything. Yang Yi picked up Shishi and said softly, "Do you remember the story of Journey to the West that Papa told you? Tang Sanzang came back from the West to bring back the scriptures so that Buddhism could have a better development in the Central Plains. Temples are where monks like Tang Sanzang live." "Then is there a Tang Sanzang here?" Shishi's face showed a surprised expression. "No, there's no Tang Sanzang in Shanghai. They're in the north," Yang Yi said. "There's no Tang Sanzang?" Shishi was a little disappointed. Because there was no Tang Sanzang, Shishi's expectations for Jing and Temple dropped a lot. Moreover, when she went in with her father to take a look, the deep courtyard and quiet and ethereal temple were not the type that Shishi liked. The little girl urged her father to leave after a while. It didn't matter. There were many beautiful scenic spots on Yuyuan Road for the father and daughter to see. What was interesting was that these scenic spots could only be found after turning into different alleys. In this deep and narrow alley, there were rows of newly sprouted sycamore trees along the way. That was not a bad scenery in itself. Without the noisy traffic, Shishi was willing to get down and walk. Yang Yi looked at the innocent little girl and couldn't help but take a few photos of her with his SLR camera. "You stand next to this tree. Yes, smile," Yang Yi instructed. From time to time, he pressed the shutter and took a few photos of Shishi's cute moments. Ehe. The little girl's smile was like a flower. She leaned against a brown, slanted brick-patterned doorpost, her hand holding the trunk of a white, mottled French parasol tree. The green shrubs in the garden next to her poked their heads out and served as the background for the little girl. "Papa, make the photos and put them in my big one." Shishi forgot how to say photo album and could only try her best to gesture. "Of course." Yang Yi smiled and nodded at her. Shishi didn't need to look at them anymore. She turned her head with satisfaction and walked forward. "Papa, look, this building is also strange." Not long after, the little girl seemed to have found another amazing building. She happily turned around and ran back to her father, holding his hand and saying, what Shishi found was also one of the scenic spots that Yang Yi planned to visit. It was the former residence of a famous person. Of course, Yang Yi wasn't familiar with this famous person, but his former residence was very luxurious. It was an Italian Gothic castle building. That was what the book said, but Yang Yi didn't know how to classify it. He just admired it. Shishi also admired it. The little girl was happy to share her discovery with her father. "Papa, look at that." "Well, what's wrong with that roof?" Yang Yi squatted down and looked in the direction of his daughter's finger. The gray outer wall was inlaid with red bricks in the middle, and the blue four-sloped roof. In the simple and elegant style, there was a clear sense of vitality. "There are two of them here. This thing, a small house, just like my building blocks," the little girl described seriously as she drew with her fingers. Yang Yi understood that she was talking about the two dark blue tiger windows on the roof. It was an evolution of the skylight. It looked like the building blocks that Shishi played with in kindergarten. It was very much like a miniature version of a house. "You're very observant. Papa will give you a thumbs up." Yang Yi gave the little girl a thumbs up. Only then did Cece smile happily. Yuyuan Road was basically an old building, but not all of them were famous people's former residences or scenic spots. There were many small shops with a literary atmosphere on this street. Most of them were coffee shops and tea shops. Yang Yi visited a few and it was an eye-opener. Looking at the decorations of other coffee shops, Yang Yi suddenly felt that his own coffee shop, which had been open for more than half a year, didn't seem to have made much progress. Compared to others, the artistic atmosphere was much less. Maybe there should be some changes, Yang Yi thought to himself. In the evening before the sun had set, Shishi, who had been shopping for the whole afternoon, was hungry. Yang Yi took her to eat strawberry Napoleon at a restaurant called Mr. Nice on Yuyuan Road. It was also a place that was highly recommended by a foodie netizen. The Napoleon cake mentioned here was actually a misunderstanding in translation. The essence of this cake was the 1,000-layer pastry. However, compared to the 1,000-layer pastry, it was more advanced. The pastry maintained a crisp texture, and the interlayer of the pastry was richer in ingredients, such as fresh cream and cheese sauce. Of course, it was strawberry Napoleon. The interlayer naturally couldn't be lacking in bright and attractive strawberry slices. Yang Yi had eaten this kind of cake before. He had also studied how to make it, but his craftsmanship was still a little lacking. There was nothing else, but this pastry, after being coated with fresh cream and cheese sauce, Yang Yi couldn't guarantee its crispness. Unless it was eaten immediately after being coated, it would soften after a few minutes. However, this craftsmanship was the secret of other chefs. Yang Yi had studied it for a long time, but he couldn't find the trick. In his previous life, he didn't have time to catch a chef and interrogate him. In this life, he didn't have the chance either. He could only try other people's craftsmanship when he met them. What made Yang Yi feel a little regretful was that the strawberry Napoleon in this shop didn't reach the extreme crispness that he used to eat in Europe. However, for Shishi, it was enough. The crisp pastry, fragrant and soft cream, and fresh strawberries were sour and sweet. They all suited Shishi's taste very well. It's delicious. The little girl ate a mouthful of cream. She burped and then smiled foolishly at her father. Yang Yi wiped his daughter's mouth in amusement. He said softly, "Just now, Dad sent Mom a text message. She didn't have time to eat dinner. She's still busy. Should we pack some cake for her?" Yes, Mom can eat it too. I like it very much." Shishi clapped her little hands and said happily. "You like it very much, so Mom will like it too, right?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. "But only the cake isn't nutritious enough. Let's buy something delicious for Mom." Chapter 430. Murphy was indeed very busy. She was at the concert in Shanghai, checking out the lighting, elevators, and other facilities with the company's person in charge until 8 o'clock in the evening. "Sister, do you want to have dinner first?" Mo Shaowan sat in the company's rented minivan and looked at Murphy worriedly. In the evening, Mo Shaowan took the time to buy coffee and snacks, but Murphy only ate an egg tart to fill her stomach. Then she continued to audition with the band and did not eat anything. Not to mention Murphy, Missouri Shaowan finished the rest of the snacks. She did not expect to spend so much time on the first day of the concert, but now Mo Shaowan felt a little hungry. Murphy looked at the driver and shook her head gently. She said to Mo Shaowan, "Let's go back to the hotel and talk." Mo Shaowan understood. She smiled and said, "Then I'll go back to the hotel and find a place to eat. Then I'll go back at night." "Why do you have to go alone?" Murphy said reproachfully. She lowered her voice and whispered in Mo Shaowan's ear. "Yang Yi also bought your share." Mo Shaowan hugged Murphy's hand and smiled mischievously. She also whispered in Murphy's ear, "I'm creating space for you." Mo Shaowan worried too much. Not to mention that Shishi was not asleep yet. Even if Shishi was asleep, Yang Yi would not torture Murphy at this time. After all, there was a concert the day after tomorrow. What if she lost her voice? There were a few reporters waiting outside the hotel. When they saw Murphy coming back, they swarmed over. "There are rumors on the internet that you and Mu Xiang are a couple. Murphy, what's your response to this?" "Murphy, about the concert the day after tomorrow." The microphones were shoved in their direction. Luckily, Mo Shaowan was adept at handling the situation. She and the chauffeur raised their hands and protected Murphy in the middle, until they squeezed into the hotel. The security guards stopped the reporters and they finally had some peace and quiet. Of course, along the way, Murphy and Mo Shaowan remained silent. The walls had ears. Who knew if someone was monitoring the movements in the elevator? Murphy and Mo Shaowan returned to their room first. But, as soon as they opened the door, Murphy saw the bright lights and the sound of the television. "Have they come here on their own?" Murphy hurriedly called Mo Shaowan in, and then closed the door in fear of being discovered. Just as Murphy turned around, Yang Yi came out of the hotel room and smiled at them. "You're back so late? Have you had dinner?" "Mom." A sweet voice was heard. Murphy then saw Shishi's little head poking out from the wall. The little girl was clinging to the side of the bed, trying to stretch her head out to look at her mother. "Mom, I'm watching TV." Shishi cried out happily, and then retracted her head. The position she was in just now was a little uncomfortable. Moreover, the little girl was still thinking about the cartoon on the television. She couldn't wait to turn her head back to watch it. At this moment, Mo Shaowan pushed the lock on the door to prevent anyone from outside. She then said with a smile, "Brother-in-law, my sister has been busy until now. She didn't even have time to eat. And when she heard that you brought her delicious food, she rushed back in a hurry. Shawan didn't have dinner either. Yes, I'm starving. Brother-in-law, what delicious food did you bring?" Mo Shawan excitedly came over. When Yang Yi heard that Murphy didn't have dinner, he hurriedly opened the thermos bag and said, "They're all local dishes from Shanghai. Hujiang pork ribs, Shanghai vegetarian duck, tofu wrapped pork, and a bowl of mushroom rice soup. There were other delicious dishes, like soup dumplings and soup dumplings, but they might not taste so good if I brought them back. So I thought that if you don't go to the rehearsal so early tomorrow, we'll go eat the local breakfast in Shanghai together." "What's in the bag over here?" Mo Shawan curiously pointed to the bag next to her. It didn't use a thermos bag, but it was obvious that it used a packing box. "Oh, these are desserts. You can eat them after dinner. There's strawberry Napoleon and walnut pie," Yang Yi said with a smile. When she heard this, although she was still watching the TV, she couldn't help but say, "Mom, strawberry Napoleon is delicious. It's super delicious." The little girl was watching TV and recommending food to her mother at the same time. She seemed to be having a hard time. Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy, "She likes to eat this very much." She ate the whole 1,000-layer pastry in one go. In the end, she couldn't eat any other delicious food. Actually, the walnut pie is not bad. It's full of walnuts, but she didn't have the fortune to enjoy it. Murphy looked at Yang Yi with a sad face and said sadly, "You brought me so much food and such a high-calorie cake to tempt me. What if I become fat after eating it?" Recently, Murphy had been worried about this problem. She usually had a good figure, and she was also the legendary person who didn't get fat, so she rarely went on the scale. But last week, because she had nothing to do at home, she bought an electronic scale from the Sahara online shopping mall. In the end, she found that after being with Yang Yi, she had gained a total of 6 pounds. 107 pounds was the result of her company's physical examination before she came back. Now she was already 113 pounds. Murphy panicked. She complained that Yang Yi made delicious food for her all day long, and pestered Yang Yi to take her to exercise in the morning to lose weight. "What's there to be afraid of? Even if you become a fat girl, I'll still take care of you," Yang Yi smiled and said to her. No, I don't want to become a fat girl," Murphy cried. Mo Shawan had already used her teeth and right hand to tear open a pair of disposable chopsticks. She flipped through the thermal bag with her left hand and shouted, "Hey Mrs. Murphy, are you still showing off your love? If you ignore me, I'll finish your dinner." In any case, Mo Fei had already made up her mind not to eat desserts tonight, but Mo Shawan proudly took over the task. She was not afraid of getting fat, and she often followed Mo Fei around, so there was no need for her to worry about losing weight. They ate while chatting with Yang Yi. Mo Shawan stuffed her mouth with food and asked, "Brother-in-law, are you planning to debut with my sister after her contract with Tianmei ends and she goes to the studio?" Murphy's eyes lit up and she looked at Yang Yi. Although Murphy knew Yang Yi's character, she still had a little hope. She also wanted Yang Yi to support each other in the entertainment industry and really open a husband and wife shop. However, Yang Yi shook his head and said, "No, I'll just write songs for Murphy behind the scenes." "That's a pity," Mo Shawan cried. "Brother-in-law, you sing very well. Moreover, those songs you sang for my sister, such as Want to Sing Me to You, and Just Happened to Meet You. If you don't release them, it'll be a waste." Yang Yi frowned slightly. Mo Shawan was right. Those songs carried so many beautiful memories between him and Murphy. If he didn't sing them himself, he wouldn't be willing to let other singers sing them. "Actually, I also hope that you can sing with me. But it's okay, you have your own choice. I can understand." Murphy reached out and shook Yang Yi's hand. Yang Yi's thoughts were still a little chaotic. Recently, there were many people who urged him to appear in public. Du Yuanlei, those readers, the editors of Sahara Publishing House, Mo Shawan, and Lance Hao Kai. He really didn't want to live a life of being the center of attention. Perhaps it was because of some psychological effects from his previous life, but to be honest, his current life was slowly changing some of his original views. Moreover, as Lance Hao Kai said, he wanted to keep a low profile. But with such a wife, was it possible to keep a low profile? Moreover, Lance Hao Kai was right about one thing. Humans were social animals. In this society, he could never be isolated from the eyes of others. Unless he abandoned his wife and children, and lived alone in the mountains. Of course, that was impossible. However, Murphy's words still made Yang Yi's heart feel warm. He gently squeezed Murphy's hand and smiled, saying, "Let me think about it. It's still early, there's no rush." However, plans could never keep up with changes. Chapter 431. Early in the morning, Yang Yi's cell phone suddenly rang. At this time, Yang Yi was combing the hair of Cece, who had just woken up and whose hair was fluffy. This ringtone was like a soul-stirring, suddenly ringing and annoying. "Papa, is that Mama?" The little girl, who was still very sleepy, was stunned for a moment as if she had been startled awake. She turned her head and asked her father in a daze. Yang Yi walked over and picked up the phone. He saw that it was Fu Jun from Yangcheng. "What's going on? Why are you calling so early?" Yang Yi frowned. He thought that something had happened at the Sahara Online Mall. He made a shu gesture to Shishi, motioning her not to speak. Then he picked up the phone. "Brother Fu, what happened?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. However, Fu Jun called Yang Yi in a hurry early in the morning, not because of the Sahara Online Mall. "Brother Yang, did you know that photos of you, your wife, and your child have been exposed?" Fu Jun's voice came from the phone, but Yang Yi was confused. "What's going on?" It turned out that Fu Jun had come to the company early in the morning. His secretary, who liked to gossip, had rushed over with an entertainment tabloid and told Fu Jun that Yang Yi had been exposed. "The newspaper took a photo of you coming out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The child's appearance was clearly seen. Then your car was also photographed. Your name was found out." After all, Fu Jun lived in Guangdong province. He was close to a city with a strong entertainment atmosphere and paparazzi gossip. So he was somewhat influenced. So when Fu Jun found out, he immediately called Yang Yi to inform him. "In a while I will take a photo of this newspaper and send it to you. Hurry up and prepare to deal with it." Yang Yi's face had already darkened at this moment. He clenched his right fist so hard that the veins on it bulged. However, he did not immediately show it. Instead, he patiently waited for Fu Jun's message. Shishi, who was next to him, seemed to feel the change in her father's aura. She pouted and said with a little grievance, "Papa, aren't you going to comb my hair?" Yang Yi turned his head and looked at the adorable girl. Most of the hostility in his heart disappeared. He calmed his mind and smiled. "Who said so? Daddy will comb your hair for you now." When Yang Yi was combing Shishi's hair, Fu Jun sent a message. But he was very calm. Yang Yi ignored it. After he finished combing Shi's hair, he went to get his phone. "I don't like this voice. It's not Mama calling." Shishi jumped out of her father's arms. She went to get a small puppet souvenir that she bought yesterday and played with it as she spoke. Yang Yi did not have time to deal with his daughter. He opened Fu Jun's message and saw several photos of entertainment tabloids. The words and pictures were real. Although they were not very clear, Yang Yi still recognized the pictures at a glance. Wasn't it exactly the same as the contents of the USB flash drive hidden in his study? Yang Yi glanced at his daughter. He got up and went to the bathroom. He closed the door and dialed Zhu Jie's number. It was so early in the morning. Zhu Jie was probably not awake yet. Yang Yi bombarded him for several minutes and called him 3 times before Zhu Jie picked up. Zhu Jie's sleepy voice came through. "Hello, Boss Muziang. Why are you calling me so early?" "Zhu Jie, are you King kidding me?" Yang Yi gritted his teeth and said angrily. His voice was almost squeezed out of his teeth. Ah. Zhu Jie was confused. 15 minutes later, after figuring out why Yang Yi was scolding him, Zhu Jie said in a panic, "Boss Muziang, it has nothing to do with me. I already gave you the USB flash drive. Also, my aunt promised to get along well with Sister Murphy. How could she leak the photos to the media? If it has nothing to do with you, does it have anything to do with me?" Yang Yi was not angry that his relationship with Murphy was exposed by the media. He was angry that Shishi's face was also published by the media. In this world, There was no such thing as underage girls not being able to report. At the same time, Yang Yi was angry that Zhu Jie had tricked him. He had gone back on his word. He had said that the matter had been resolved, but in the end, the photos were already exposed by the media. Yang Yi really wanted to kill someone. No, Zhu Jie's brain was not enough at the moment. Zhu Jie, if you don't give me a satisfactory answer, don't blame me for being rude to you. Yang Yi was not threatening him. He was really angry and did not reject using some of his methods. Boss, don't be anxious. Let me think about it. My aunt would not leak the photos. My dad has already told her. Zhu Jie was anxious. He was really afraid of Yang Yi, a man who did not follow the law. If it is not her, if it is not you, who else could it be? Yang Yi punched the wall of the bathroom. Jian Chua, Manager Jian, my aunt gave her the USB flash drive. Could it be that she leaked the photos secretly? Zhu Jie suddenly had an idea. You are asking me? No, I'm saying it's possible. How about this, Boss Mu Xiang? Don't worry, I'll immediately ask my aunt about this matter, and let her investigate it for you. Zhu Jie said solemnly. Yang Yi was silent for a while. Then he said slowly, I will wait for your answer. Don't let me down again. He did not care about Zhu Jie's promise and hung up the phone impatiently. After hanging up the phone, Yang Yi's eyes flashed. He could not trust Zhu Jie now. However, he was in Shanghai now, so he could not take any measures. Papa, are you pooping? I am scared. The little girl's timid voice came from outside the bathroom. She saw that her father had stayed in the bathroom for a long time, and she could not sit still. Yang Yi calmed down a little. He washed his face and came out of the bathroom. He said with a smile, What's wrong? Are you afraid that Papa fell into the toilet and can't get out? She stretched out her little hands and wanted her father to hug her. In her father's arms she muttered, I am scared. Papa is gone, and only she is left. Hugging the pure and soft little girl, Yang Yi felt that there was still some beauty in the world. His heart, which was originally covered with dark clouds, finally saw a ray of sunshine. This entertainment tabloid was not only published in Guangdong province, but the sudden big news was also discovered by the people of Tianmei. They did not know that there was a problem with the source of the photos. However, Murphy suddenly suffered a reputation crisis, and the entertainment tabloid even used the title, The Queen of Jade Girl is a married young woman, Murphy's husband and child exposed. The Queen of Jade Girl was a title that Murphy was given by the media 6 years ago. How could the public relations department not pay attention to it? They asked Murphy whether it was true or not while anxiously preparing for the public relations matters. Therefore, when Yang Yi called Zhu Jie, Mo Xiaowan and Murphy also received the news from the company. This morning, Yang Yi was going to take Shishi, Murphy and Mo Xiaowan to taste the specialty breakfast of Shanghai. But now it seemed that it was impossible. The media reporters must have received the news earlier than them. Now the hotel entrance must be surrounded by reporters. Not to mention Murphy, even Yang Yi would not be able to get away. What should we do? When they arrived at Murphy's room, Murphy somewhat panicked and asked Yang Yi for help. The sudden exposure of their relationship completely disrupted Mo Fei's plan. And she had never been a quick-witted person. Chapter 432. What should I do? Yang Yi hadn't thought about this yet. He didn't care much about their relationship being exposed. Now he was more concerned about who had leaked the photo to the tabloid. This uncontrollable feeling made Yang Yi feel uncomfortable all over. It was very uncomfortable. Therefore, Yang Yi just comforted Murphy and said to her, Don't worry. Anyway, didn't you already plan to make our relationship public? Just take this as an opportunity. We can openly admit it. Murphy said sadly, Yes, I wanted to make it public, but now that it's been exposed, it doesn't give us any time to react. And why is the person who reported this so hateful? He even exposed Shishi's photo. Cece, who was beside him, heard her name and turned her head in confusion. She couldn't go out to play, so the little girl was in a bad mood. Fortunately, there was a TV in the hotel, so Shishi could watch cartoons. However, Shishi realized that her parents didn't pay attention to her, as if they had never mentioned her name. However, she still believed her ears. She crawled over on the bed and pulled her mom's clothes, calling out crisply, "Mom, I'm here." Murphy was stunned for a moment. She turned her head and forced a smile at the little girl. "It's okay. Mom isn't talking to you. You can continue watching TV." She hugged Shishi lovingly in her arms and gently rubbed Shishi's little head. She sighed in her heart. "In the future, you may not live as freely as you do now." Murphy didn't want her daughter to grow up under the spotlight. She didn't want the reporters to chase after her daughter like a celebrity, because in that way, the little girl's strengths and weaknesses would be infinitely magnified. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to grow up happily. This was also why Murphy was hesitant to disclose her relationship and family situation. She was not worried that she would lose fans if she went public. She had never regarded herself as an idol singer. Moreover, after she and Yang Yi fell in love and got married, she was so happy that she wanted to announce it to the world. It was just that she made her worry. At this moment, Yang Yi's mind was still spinning. He didn't have time to think about how to solve the problem. Instead, he was thinking about how this problem could have happened. He thought of many possibilities. The first possibility was that Zhu Jie had gone back on his words. He had said one thing on the surface and another behind his back to gain his trust. Then he had leaked the photos to the reporters. Of course, this possibility was very low. Judging from Zhu Jie's reaction, Yang Yi felt that he shouldn't be lying. However, Yang Yi didn't believe his own judgment. He wanted evidence. The second possibility was that Niu Meiling was too hypocritical. She promised Zhu Jie in front of everyone, but then sent the photos to the reporters. Yang Yi felt that this possibility was very high. Wasn't Niu Meiling always like this? However, there was a third possibility and a fourth possibility. The third possibility was that Jian Chua had sold the photos to the reporters behind their backs. The fourth possibility, although Zhu Jie hadn't thought of it, Yang Yi thought of it. It could be that the paparazzi hunter Zhu Jie had mentioned, Teacher Ko, had sold the photos to two people. Yang Yi hadn't paid much attention to the paparazzi hunter's situation before, because he felt that these people were just fleas that could be trampled to death. But now, it seemed that he was wrong. A small flea could overturn an elephant. These people were like Zhuo Wei. In his previous life, they had caused a lot of trouble for celebrities. It wasn't without reason. Yang Yi felt that he had to pay more attention to them. However, he had to take one bite at a time. Problems had to be solved one by one. Just as Yang Yi was deep in thought, Mo Shaoan, who was looking at her computer, shouted, "Sis, your fans are arguing." Yang Yi and Murphy went over and saw the micro-broadcast that Mo Shaoan had posted yesterday. Although it was only a photo of Murphy at the concert, the comments under the latest micro-broadcast were explosive. From the top few comments, Yang Yi and Murphy saw that this news wasn't only reported by the entertainment tabloids. Some web portals reacted quickly and obtained authorization to repost this news online. This time, the news had spread like wildfire. And in the comments, the reactions of the fans were different. Some expressed their surprise and couldn't believe the authenticity of this news. Murphy is married? What's going on? Isn't this news too sudden? It's not just marriage. Look at how old her child is. It doesn't make sense. How can she only get married when her child is so old? And why did it only come out now? What do the paparazzi do for a living? Could it be photoshopped? Asking for a technical evaluation. There were really people who analyzed it in a weird manner. The photo is a photocopy of the newspaper after it was published. I can't tell if it's photoshopped or not. But looking at the timeline, the possibility of Murphy having a child is very high. A few years ago, when Murphy retired, some newspapers speculated that she might have gone abroad to get married and have a child. Murphy retired 6 years ago, got pregnant and gave birth. The child should be about 4 or 5 years old by now. The child in the photo looks about 5 or 6 years old. But maybe the child of a celebrity is well nourished and is tall, so they are about the same age. So this news might be true. Then the question is, who is this Yang Yi in the photo? Did he and Murphy just get married? If so, then what is his relationship with this child? Could he be her stepfather? Murphy doesn't look like a good woman either. She even said she was a virgin. It's also possible that Murphy married into a rich family and became the stepmother of someone else's daughter. Look at that little girl. She's even being carried by that man. That's not very likely, right? And that man doesn't look like he's rich. I've checked the car in the photo. Tyrannical wolf, about 600,000. It can't even be considered a luxury car. There were many people who were making malicious speculations and wanted to step on them. The emotions of the fans were stirred up. Other than the previous comments, there were even more comments that did not approve of the marriage between Yang-yi and Murphy. They could not accept it. Murphy is my goddess. Why did she suddenly get married? It's not just marriage. Her child is already so big. I feel like I'm going to collapse. I don't like this man. He's not good looking. He's not compatible with Murphy. Even more, the fans who supported Murphy and Mu Xiang in the past were now exploding. They exploded on the spot. Some even hurled insults at them. Who the hell is Yang-yi? Didn't they agree that Murphy would be with Mu Xiang? Where did this guy pop out from? Sob, it's not happy. I don't like Murphy marrying a passerby. What, Yang-yi? I've never heard of him. Could it be that Murphy looks down on Mu Xiang? But this man isn't handsome either. What's the use of being tall? Can he be eaten? Mu Xiang is overflowing with talent. You didn't choose him but this man. Are you blind? That blissful look on the variety show was just an act, right? How disgusting. To think that I was hoping that Murphy and Mu Xiang would fall in love because of the song. Isn't the entertainment industry full of such trivial matters? They didn't deny it or admit it. It's obviously a publicity stunt to trick fools like you into believing it. They even said that Murphy and Mu Xiang were a couple. Are you dumbfounded now? Do you think it's possible that Murphy cheated Mu Xiang's feelings? She cheated him of 12 songs and then actually had a child and got married? That Mu Xiang is too pitiful. I've decided that from now on, I'll only support Mu Xiang if he's out of Murphy's trap. These comments made Murphy very uncomfortable. It was almost the opposite of the previous situation. This time, it was a one-sided criticism and opposition. There were also the blessings that Murphy wanted to see, but there weren't many of them. No matter who Murphy marries, as long as she's happy, that's good enough. Whether it's Mu Xiang or Yang-yi, we just like Murphy's songs. If she can continue to sing well, we won't mind. She's married. She must be happy. And she already has such a big baby. Sister Murphy is a winner in life. These scattered blessings were drowned in endless cynicism and ridicule. No matter who Murphy marries, she's married to a nobody. If Mu Xiang is annoyed, let's see if Mu Xiang will still write songs for him in the future. We're not talking about who Murphy marries. We're questioning whether Murphy played with Mu Xiang's feelings. If he can write 12 songs for Murphy, I think Mu Xiang is an infatuated man. Mo Xiaowan looked at Murphy holding the mouse and dragging the page. She quickly comforted her. Actually, it's okay. They don't know that brother-in-law is Mu Xiang. However, Yang-yi couldn't stand it anymore. He said unhappily, "Isn't this too exaggerated? Are these people Mu Xiang's fans or Murphy's fans? If I'm not Mu Xiang, will they break us up?" Mo Xiaowan laughed and said, "Brother-in-law, don't be so stubborn. Look at it from a different perspective. They've been keeping their appetites high enough. Later, when we decide how to admit and make it public, you suddenly tell them that Yang-yi is Mu Xiang and Mu Xiang is Yang-yi. With such a sudden reversal, they'll be speechless and dumbfounded. Isn't that more interesting?" Chapter 433. Sometimes, Yang-yi was indeed a little stubborn. His main body was suppressed by his own alternate account. Although it was the same logic as a left hand against a right hand, Yang-yi was still a little unhappy. After all, his main body had created many classic works. For example, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword, 2 physical bestsellers, both made it into the top 10 in the year-end sales rankings last year. For example, Yuzue and Prison Break, these 2 serialized web novels, were still firmly standing on the top of the list. Among them, Prison Break was the undisputed number 1. There were also Shishi's bedtime stories, Journey in the White Night, and so on. The screenwriter of the recent popular micro-movie, Fairy Tale, had also signed his main body's name. How did he end up as a nobody in these people's mouths? Indeed, his main body rarely appeared in public and had only participated in one military event. However, Mu Xiang had never shown his face either, had he? For some reason, Yang Yi suddenly remembered what the old man Chen Fengchen said when he persuaded him to participate in the press conference for soldiers' assault. As the saying goes, one must become famous early. Little Yang, don't you young people have this awareness? This is no longer the era where good wine is not afraid of deep alleys. The more you resist contact with the public, the more the public will resist to understand you and your works. In the end, no matter how good the work is, it will lose its brilliance. Although Chen Fengchen's purpose in saying this was to create more gimmicks for the movie, Yang Yi only realized that the old man's words had come true when he thought about it. He had concealed his identity, resulting in him becoming a nobody. No, Yang Yi was a little unwilling. I've decided. Yang Yi had been secretly pondering when Murphy suddenly spoke up. What have you decided? Mo Xiaowan asked curiously. Now that it has been exposed by the media, and there are so many misunderstandings, I've decided to make it completely public. At tomorrow's concert, I'll tell them the truth personally, Murphy said. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Murphy to suddenly become so decisive. Just now, after she knew that she had been exposed, she still looked like she was out of her wits. Could it be that she was provoked by those fans' comments? I thought you wanted to announce it directly on micro-broadcasting. Mo Xiaowan giggled. Micro-broadcasting will also announce it after the concert. Murphy nodded. After all, it was still a new concept. Currently, no one had fully grasped the correct way to use micro-broadcasting as a channel to disseminate information. Most of the time, it was still through the channels of reporters, media, or directly holding press conferences. For Mo Xiaowan to think of using micro-broadcasting, she had vaguely grasped the essence of it. Murphy bit her lower lip, looked at Yang Yi, and said with some difficulty, Yang Yi, can you accompany me on the concert stage tomorrow? I want to use this opportunity to introduce you to everyone. I want to tell everyone that you're Mu Xiang. I won't allow them to say such things to you. You're the best. Murphy was a little nervous. She knew that Yang Yi did not like to appear in public. Furthermore, last night, he had said that he did not want to debut. Would he be willing to go on stage with her? However, Murphy's words warmed Yang Yi's heart. Not only did he not refuse, he even looked into Murphy's beautiful eyes and said gently, Of course. How could I let you face it alone? However, since Murphy wanted to make an official announcement tomorrow night, Yang Yi began to ponder in his heart. There were still close to 2 days left. Yang Yi felt that he could take advantage of this time to create a wave of trouble. Mo Xiaowan, who had a stomach full of dog food, rolled her eyes. Actually, in the past, Mo Xiaowan was like those fans. No matter how she looked at Yang Yi, she did not like him. But now, as she got to know him better, in Mo Xiaowan's eyes, Yang Yi and Murphy were like a golden couple when they were together. They were exceptionally compatible. Let these people know how short-sighted they are. Mo Xiaowan thought to herself. She smirked and said, Sis brother-in-law, I feel that instead of going on stage to talk, why don't you first sing a song together and then introduce yourselves? This way, it'll be more convincing, and it'll give them a bigger shock. Yang Yi and Murphy were stunned for a moment. They looked at each other. Murphy's eyes were filled with eagerness. She really wanted to sing with Yang Yi, but she was worried that Yang Yi would reject her. Like a little girl who was about to confess her love, she asked nervously, Can we? Yang Yi smiled. I think we can. But, what song are we going to sing? Murphy said happily. It's not easy to choose a song that we can sing together. Come across the sea to see you? Or is it in my song? Yang Yi smiled and said, Actually, among the songs that I sang for you before, there's one that's very suitable for a man and a woman to sing together. Really? Which one? Murphy asked happily. If it was a song that Yang Yi sang for her, Murphy had basically learned it from Yang Yi, which also reduced the trouble of learning. Mo Xiaowan looked at her watch and said, Hey, don't discuss it here. Why don't you go directly to the concert venue? This is a new show. We need to discuss it with the director and practice with the band. Why don't we rehearse together? After Murphy heard this, she looked at Yang-yi apologetically and said, I'm sorry, we might have to delay your travel plans today. But we want to show the audience a good show, so it's necessary to rehearse in advance. Also, you have to experience the stage in advance. Now Murphy wouldn't doubt Yang-yi's singing skills. Now Yang-yi's voice was even more demonic than hers, and under her guidance his singing skills had improved a lot. But going on stage and singing in front of 40,000 people was different from singing at home. Not to mention Yang-yi. Even Murphy was nervous when she held her first concert. At that time, she was no longer a rookie singer. I'll listen to your arrangements. Yang-yi smiled. But now, the problem was how to get out. The outside of the hotel was already surrounded by reporters and paparazzi. It was impossible for Yang-yi to walk out in front of the reporters like he did yesterday. They weren't blind. Now, Yang-yi's face was even more recognizable than that of a wanted criminal. But there was still a way. The reporters could block the entrance of the hotel, but they couldn't block the entrance and exit of the hotel's underground parking lot. An hour later, an inconspicuous black car slowly drove out of the hotel's underground parking lot exit. The paparazzi waiting nearby took a look and found that it was not Mo-Fei's nanny van, and the driver in the driver's seat was also an ordinary man, so they lost interest and then looked at the other cars that drove out from behind. However, when the car drove out of an intersection, the blanket on the front passenger seat lifted by itself, revealing a man sitting up straight. If someone looked carefully, they would realize that it was Yang-yi, who was at the center of the storm. At this time, from the back seat, 3 heads popped out from behind the front seat cushion. One of them was a small head. Shishi's hair was a little messy, probably because she had been hidden in her mother's arms for a long time. But she was more curious, so she poked her head out and looked outside. Are you done? Murphy asked in a low voice. Yes. Yang-yi nodded. Shishi had been holding it in for a long time. Now the little girl could finally speak. She pretended to gasp for breath, and then she couldn't act anymore. She giggled and said, Oh, I'm so bored. Papa, are we playing hide and seek? Murphy raised her index finger to Shishi. As long as Shishi covered her mouth again, but her eyes were still smiling. She thought it was very funny. Yang-yi didn't have time to talk to Shishi. At the next intersection, after making sure that there were no cars following them, Yang-yi asked the driver to pull over. He and the driver got out of the car. He shook hands with the driver and gave him some money to keep it a secret. Then, Yang-yi sat in the driver's seat and drove Murphy and the others to the stadium where the concert was held. Chapter 434. Brother-in-law, where did you get the car? And who was that person just now? Mo Shawan asked curiously. Yang-yi smiled slightly and said, The car was rented. That person, of course, is also someone from the car rental company. I asked him for a small favor and spent some money. It turned out that Yang-yi had thought of a way to sneak out of the hotel and settle all of this. He had just escaped from the encirclement of reporters and paparazzi. This was a small scene. Yang-yi had seen bigger things before. However, Murphy and Mo Shawan were a little surprised. Even if they were in the entertainment industry, they were still ordinary people. Just now, they had passed under the eyes of the reporters. They felt nervous and excited. Can I speak now? Shishi couldn't help but pull her mother's hand and ask in a low voice. Murphy forgot about this. She smiled and adjusted the zipper of her daughter's jacket and said, Of course you can. Just now there was an unfamiliar uncle around. While Yang-yi and the others were rehearsing at the concert, the entertainment tabloid that had fiercely attracted a lot of attention today actually struck while the iron was hot and released a supplement. This supplement was a newspaper. Combined together, it took up about 2 pages of the newspaper. There were also some random articles that no one read that took up 1 page, and the remaining page was filled with new revelations. However, such a disgusting supplement still managed to sell as many copies as the morning newspaper in the afternoon. There were really too many onlookers. If it was said that the morning's newspaper lacked some convincing evidence, some fans who were unwilling to give up thought that it might be a misunderstanding. For example, Yang Yi was Murphy's bodyguard, or Yang Yi was Murphy's brother. In that case, this afternoon's newspaper was an irrefutable truth. Murphy and Yang Yi's wedding photo. Although the resolution was a little blurry compared to the previous photos, it could still be seen clearly. In the wedding photo with a red background and white clothes, the two of them were smiling brightly. Murphy was even brimming with a happy smile that was rarely seen. This entertainment tabloid actually wanted to wait for Tianmei's people to finish their public relations before dropping this big bomb. But for the whole morning, Tianmei's people seemed to be indifferent. Even Mo Fei's microblog was almost flipped over, but there was no new status update. They were also worried that the person who sold them the information was not the only one, so they hurriedly spread it out and made a fortune first. However, they had no idea that Murphy was already prepared to be honest. Tianmei's PR department had also received Murphy's instructions and changed their original strategy of defending. Instead, they prepared a draft and sent it to a few familiar media outlets, asking them to publish it the day after Murphy's concert, which was the weekend. But now, Tianmei was in a mess. Niu Meiling was not in the mood to ask about how this matter was handled. Her eyes were red. She stared at Jianchua, wanting to get to the bottom of this matter. Who was the one who leaked the photos to the media? Niu Meiling was very angry. She felt wronged. She really didn't do it. She was experienced. Ever since she found out that Murphy's partner was Mu Xiang, she knew that even if she leaked the photos to the media and exposed Murphy's marriage, it would be difficult to cause any impact. Moreover, Mu Xiang already knew about the existence of the information. If it was really leaked, she would be the #1 suspect. Why did she end up in a bad situation? But who knew that she would still be the scapegoat? Early in the morning, Niu Meiling was suspected by her nephew, Zhu Jie, and received a call from Zhu Jingwei. Niu Meiling felt that she was more wrong than Dou Yi. Wait, who is Dou Yi? Sister Ling, it wasn't me. I've been with you for so many years. It's not like you don't know. You said not to expose it, so I returned the USB to you. Jianchua felt wronged and said hurriedly, that information, that USB, passed through two people. One was me, and the other was you. I didn't. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be? Niu Meiling said. She suddenly turned her head and frowned at Zhu Jie, who was sitting next to her. Based on Niu Meiling's understanding of Jianchua, it was impossible for her to do such a thing. Moreover, she couldn't see any flaws in her expression. Why are you looking at me? Zhu Jie asked, puzzled. Although I also took the USB, Auntie, you don't think that I did it, right? If I wanted to leak it to the media, why would I spend so much effort to stop you? Moreover, I took the USB that morning and sent it directly to Mu Xiang. It's impossible that I leaked it. Zhu Jie said. I didn't either. I locked it in the drawer. Jianchua quickly said, Sister Ling, do you think that Teacher Ko was greedy for money, so he didn't keep his promise and sold it to two people? Niu Meiling frowned deeply. If that was the case, it would be very difficult to investigate. Mu Yuqing rarely read gossip. His usual hobbies were reading books and comics. That's right, he was a typical otaku. However, today, he read a piece of gossip for the first time ever. This was because on Yang Yi's personal website, which had been established recently, he saw someone post that Yang Yi's marriage with a female celebrity had been exposed by the media. Although it was a normal account, Mu Yuqing, as an old fan, could tell that it was an official account of Sahara Publishing. It was these people who had pulled him in. Did this mean that it was true? Out of curiosity about what Yang Yi looked like, Mu Yuqing couldn't help but search online. The authorized gossip news could be seen on several portals, and Mu Yuqing also saw Yang Yi in person for the first time. He's quite tall. Mu Yuqing compared the reference objects around the first photo and couldn't help but click his tongue. He also looks strong, masculine, and handsome. Mu Yuqing's last comment was when he saw the new report and the wedding photo with the red background and white shirt. It wasn't that Mu Yuqing was gay. He just recalled some rumors in the book review section that Yang Yi was a retired Special Forces soldier. With such a comparison, the image of the man on the screen matched quite well. Mu Yuqing originally planned to retreat after a glance at this piece of gossip news. However, as he continued reading, he couldn't stop himself. It turns out that Master Yang Yi is so awesome. He actually flirted with a very popular celebrity. Mu Yuqing saw some of the introductions about Mo Fei and thought with delight. Mu Yuqing was Yang Yi's hardcore fan. Naturally, he was thinking for Yang Yi. Murphy was so beautiful and was a big celebrity. Mu Yuqing only felt that Yang Yi didn't lose out. He also secretly felt that the two of them were quite compatible. A talented man and a beautiful woman. Since ancient times, hadn't it always been about the talent of the man and the beauty of the woman? Although there were more additions in modern times, these 2 points couldn't be wrong. However, when Mu Yuqing saw some gossip columns commenting on Murphy's marriage, he felt that it was too degrading for Murphy to marry an ordinary person. It wasn't worth it. F***ck. Mu Yuqing felt like there were tens of thousands of alpacas galloping through his heart. He suddenly became unhappy. Is Yang Yi an ordinary person? Mu Yuqing couldn't take it anymore. He opened a book group and typed furiously. Is Yang Yi an ordinary person? Instantly, he received a lot of replies. He's not an ordinary person. If boss is an ordinary person, then what are we? Haha, if boss Yang is an ordinary person, then what are you? In terms of income, writing skills and talent, no matter what, boss is 100 times better than a rookie like you. How dare you say he's an ordinary person? You'll be scolded to death in minutes. Brother above, don't be angry. Old Mu is one of us. What's wrong with old Mu? Why did you say that all of a sudden? Mu Yuqing didn't care. He angrily forwarded the reports he saw today and said, I'm curious. What makes these media so confident that boss Yang Yi is an ordinary person? Yang Yi is as famous as Murphy, right? His words were quickly drowned out by the exclamations. F***ck. Is it really boss Yang Yi? Yang Yi is so handsome. He's worthy of being a retired Special Forces soldier. He's not like other authors who are fat and stay at home. By the way, I saw this news this morning. At that time, I thought to myself, could it be someone with the same name? If it's really boss Yang Yi, then it's really great. Murphy is my favorite female singer and Yang Yi is my favorite author. The two of them together, wow. However, at this time, the book group leader temporarily muted everyone and only unmuted Mu Yuqing. Old Mu, is this news reliable? Is it really boss Yang Yi? It's definitely reliable. I heard it from an employee of Sahara Publishing. Look at this news. It's in Jiangcheng. Jiangcheng is the base of the Jiangnan Military District. Last year, didn't boss Yang Yi go to the Jiangnan Military District for an event? At this time, the administrator of the group also contacted Sahara Publishing. He also received confirmation. The group leader made a conclusion. The problem now is that none of the news reports reported positively about boss Yang Yi. Old Mu just said that those people still think that boss Yang Yi is an ordinary person and not worthy of Murphy. If that's the case, we hardcore fans shouldn't sit back and do nothing. We should also take action and let those idiots see boss Yang Yi's power. This appeal was echoed by almost everyone. There were relatively few people in this group, but everyone joined various groups. They spontaneously helped to promote and appeal, and even shouted in the comments section of Yang Yi's books. Gradually, a force that couldn't be ignored gathered. Chapter 435. Because of that incident, Yang Yi's personal website, which had been slowly brewing, suddenly received tens of thousands of visitors, and the number was still increasing. To clear Yang Yi's name, I'll leave a footprint first. Follow me. The post had been posted for less than 2 hours, but it had already received more than 20,000 comments. By the evening, it had reached 100,000 comments. Although there were repeated IDs, the scale was still astounding. Their power was also gradually reflected. By evening, the comments section of the several portals that reposted the gossip was basically dominated by Yang Yi's fans. Unlike the Water Army, they were all spontaneous. Most of the fans worked hard to introduce Yang Yi's achievements in the field of literature in their own words. The sincerity in their words was moving. Have you read the books written by Yang Yi? Soldier's Assault, Drawing Sword. Don't talk nonsense if you haven't read enough. I'm dead. How dare Yang Yi say that he's an ordinary person? He earns tens of millions a month. Do you even have 10,000? Hee our Yang Yi is a low-key person, but you're calling him an ordinary person. I can't stand it anymore. Do you dare to tell me your address? I'll send you something. Of course, most of the fans were more civilized. There was no way they would not criticize Yang Yi. They patiently analyzed the situation of the two protagonists in the gossip. Murphy is a big star, but Yang Yi isn't bad either. How many best-selling books have he published? Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword were both licensed to director Chen Fengchen, and it's said that we'll see the release of the TV series Soldier's Assault in the second half of the year. He's half a part of the entertainment industry, isn't he? Yang Yi isn't an ordinary person. The person who wrote this article should at least search for his name first, okay? The website shows that Yang Yi has tens of millions of fans. With such popularity, he shouldn't be any worse than Murphy, right? Not only that, but at around 7 p.m., someone shouted on Yang Yi's personal website. The army of people who wanted to clear Yang Yi's name went to Murphy's Weibo. Fortunately, the people who read novels were cultured people. Cough, they still remembered that Yang Yi and Murphy were a couple. Before the army set off, they made an appeal. Murphy is Yang Yi's wife. She's one of us, so we can't be as reckless as before. Try to persuade and educate her. In the beginning, everyone was very friendly. They politely introduced their username, Yang Yi, to Murphy's fans. However, Murphy's fans did not buy it. Although some of them were still rational, some of them were unhappy to see their territory being taken over by outsiders. So they began to curse. Who cares who your Lord Yang Yi is? Is this a place where you can behave atrociously? I'm laughing. A small author dares to call himself a celebrity. Isn't he a toad that wants to eat swan meat? The literary circle and the entertainment circle are two different things. Don't cross the line. Let me give you a word of advice. D*MN, who are you trying to scare with so few people? Tens of millions of fans? Why do I only see 300,000 comments? Most of them were posted during the day. Among these people, many of them were dissatisfied with the news of Murphy's marriage. They were a little hot-headed, so they became so uncultured. They also succeeded in angering some Yang Yi's fans. Gradually, the comments section fell into chaos. It even escalated to a war of words between the literary circle and the entertainment circle. There were still some people who were rational. For example, some of Murphy's fans calmed down and felt that if Yang Yi was really as good as these people said, then Murphy's marriage with him was not unacceptable. However, most of the fans were not rational. They originally supported the coupling of Murphy and Mu Ziyang. Now they could not accept the marriage of Murphy and Yang Yi. Therefore, this situation that could not be communicated at all led to a vigorous argument. Yang Yi originally only wanted the people of Sahara Publishing to secretly announce his identity. He wanted to see how much the situation could be salvaged compared to the original account. However, the development after that was out of Yang Yi's control. It was not something he could have expected. When he came back in the evening, Yang Yi saw the comments section of the gossip news, and his fans were speaking up for him. He was very gratified, but when he saw the farce in the comments section of Mo Fei's micro-broadcast, he was a little speechless. Were these people's heads kicked by donkeys? Did it have to be Mu Ziyang, to meet their standards? Of course, Yang Yi did not continue to argue. It was fine to do something small. If he insisted on making things difficult for himself, then he was stupid. Moreover, Yang Yi was not free today. He was busy rehearsing with Murphy for the concert. In order not to make a fool of himself in tomorrow's performance, he also went all out and sang with Murphy several times. However, the good news was that Yang Yi and Murphy's tacit understanding was very high. The two only needed to look at each other to understand each other's meaning. Therefore, there was basically no problem with singing together. Murphy's only worry was whether Yang Yi would be nervous when facing tens of thousands of fans tomorrow. Murphy's mentality was very good. She did not pay attention to the outside world's disturbances and focused on preparing for tomorrow's concert. If I get it, it's my fortune. If I don't, it's my fate. In the evening, Murphy smiled and said to Mo Shawan, who was telling her about the latest news from the entertainment tabloid in the afternoon. The fans who really like my music will still stay. Some of the fake fans who are not very reliable will still leave. I'll take this opportunity to let them know that I'm just a singer, not an idol who needs to sacrifice my happiness for them. The next day, regarding Murphy's report, there was a lack of convincing evidence. The entertainment tabloid was no longer the only one who stood out, and the other media finally reacted. For example, the media that were monitoring the hotel gave a very important piece of news. Yang Yi's car was parked in the parking lot of the hotel where Murphy was staying. This tyrant and its license plate number were the key to the entertainment tabloid being able to dig out Yang Yi's name. In the entertainment tabloid's first piece of news, it took up a lot of space. Therefore, to be able to find the car in this hotel, the media that dug out this piece of news boldly guessed that Yang Yi was staying in this hotel. TSK, Murphy came to hold a concert, and even had a secret meeting with her husband in a hotel. This gossip really made the onlookers happy. Yesterday, Yang Yi's fans made a lot of noise, so naturally, it attracted a lot of attention. Some media actively sought confirmation, and some media did not even bother to do so. The next day, they directly reported the identity of Murphy's marriage partner. However, this time, they were a little more polite. Some media even changed their tone, and began to recognize the marriage between Yang Yi and Murphy. Although Yang Yi is a rising star in the literary circle, he has already sold the copyright of 2 of his works, and is preparing to make them into a TV series. He will have a good position in the entertainment industry. Looking at it this way, Yang Yi and Murphy can be considered a match. The comparison between Yang Yi and Mu Xiang is difficult to determine. After all, the 2 of them are in different fields. The only thing they have in common is that they are both creators. However, love has nothing to do with good or bad, and has nothing to do with wealth. As long as Murphy and Yang Yi are truly in love, I feel that I should still give my sincere blessings. However, no matter how the media and reporters pestered them, and how the outside world was in an uproar, Tianmei and Murphy did not give any response. Even the staff at Tianmei's headquarters kept their mouths shut. They did not reveal anything to the reporters who blocked the door. Time passed very quickly. As night fell, the Shanghai stadium was brightly lit. True fans who bought tickets to watch the concert lined up early to check their tickets and enter. Murphy's second concert was about to begin. Chapter 436. Chu Fangfang was an ordinary junior student at Shanghai University of Technology. She liked Murphy's songs very much, and she heard that Murphy's live performance was even more amazing, so she bought tickets early with her roommate Zhong Jinjin. Although it was not a particularly good seat for students, it was already very satisfying to be able to watch a concert. Hey, I thought this concert was going to be over. I didn't expect there to be so many people. After Zhong Jinjin sat down, she looked around and couldn't help but whisper to Chu Fangfang. How could it be over? Chu Fangfang laughed. Just because of yesterday's gossip? The news of Murphy's marriage became the main topic of their dormitory's night talk yesterday. Yes, you don't know that these stars are particularly afraid of their feelings being exposed. Isn't there a Lu-something idol singer in Harbor City? He's in his 40s, and he doesn't dare to disclose his marriage. When he was exposed, he was so scared that he hit his wife. Zhong Jinjin was particularly fond of gossip, so she said with great interest, "That's just an idol singer." Mo Fei was not an idol singer. She relied on her singing skills and her ability to become famous. Anyway, I think most of the people who came to the concert today came because they liked her songs. Chu Fangfang gave a different opinion. Okay, anyway, I'm here to watch the fun. Zhong Jinjin said with a smile and hugged Chu Fangfang's arm. However, Chu Fangfang and Zhong Jinjin didn't chat. They took the time to take a few photos, selfies and group photos, and prepared to send them back to micro-broadcasting as a souvenir. Unknowingly, the concert began. With the roaring background music, a huge ball surrounded by a huge screen slowly opened. Like a UFO in a science fiction movie, an escalator slowly descended. Suddenly, the lights at the exit flashed wildly, and Murphy finally appeared in the overwhelming cheers of tens of thousands of fans. Behind her, the light was shining, like a god descending to the earth. No, it should be a fairy descending to the earth, because Murphy, wearing a familiar white gauze dress, walked down the escalator like a fairy and walked down to the earth. Beautiful. Chu Fangfang's Zhong Zhenjin was so excited that she felt as if she was there herself. She shouted along with the fans at the scene. However, Chu Fangfang was more interested in the song Murphy was going to sing. But, based on the accompaniment and the familiar melody, even a true fan like her could recognize it. Even now, I'm still the same. The loneliness of the night can easily make one sad. Murphy raised the microphone, and her first sentence elicited even louder cheers. I didn't hear from you because I was thinking about you. On the stage, Murphy's singing suddenly stopped. Her voice was gentle and beautiful as she said, "Can you join us? If you love me, don't leave. If you say you don't love me." The fans below the stage went crazy. They excitedly sang along with Murphy. Chu Fangfang also sang happily. She liked this song very much. The atmosphere at the scene was ignited. The stars twinkled in the dark auditorium. The fans swayed their light sticks, swaying almost in unison to the beat of the song. After Murphy finished singing the song, Chu Fangfang still wanted to continue. At this time, she heard Zhong Zhenjin come over and whisper, "Her live performance is really good. No one else can compare to her voice." "I knew it," Chu Fangfang said with some pride. Murphy is one of the few singers who can sing live as well as the recorded version. At this time Murphy, who finished singing the warm-up song, waited for the cheers of the fans and all kinds of voices saying, "Murphy, I love you," to stop. Finally, she could say her opening remarks. However, to the disappointment of many people, Murphy didn't mention a word about the gossip that caused a stir yesterday. Instead, after thanking the fans who came to support her, she said with a smile, "Today I'll bring you a new song." This news was so explosive that the fans below the stage couldn't react for a while. But soon, their excited screams rose, and the whole stadium was filled with deafening cheers. A new song. Regardless of whether it was reasonable to sing a new song after the new album was released 2 months ago, it was like a novel. Regardless of whether the author could write so many chapters, they just wanted to urge the author to update. If you have the ability, release 100 chapters. Even if you release 100 chapters every day, I have the money to subscribe. The fans at Murphy's concert had such a mentality. When they heard that Murphy was going to sing a new song, they were already very excited. "Hurry up and sing, we'll definitely buy. Another new song. Murphy is crazy." Chu Fangfang excitedly took Zhong Zhenjin's hand and said, "This is the first time I've seen a singer release a song so quickly. I hope it's another masterpiece." However, before Chu Fangfang and Zhong Zhenjin responded, Murphy continued, "Today for this new song, I've invited a very, very special guest to come to the scene and sing this song with me." Before she finished speaking, the cheers rose again. The fans' curiosity was bursting. "Who is it? Which singer?" Chu Fangfang guessed wildly. "It can't be? Could it be Yang Yi?" Zhong Zhenjin's eyes were burning with the fire of gossip as she said excitedly, "I don't think it's possible. Isn't Yang Yi a novel writer?" Chu Fangfang excitedly clenched her fists and said, "I think it's Chen Yijie or Mu Xiang. Didn't Murphy say that it's a very special guest to her?" Zhong Zhenjin frowned and said, "Because it's very special, it's possible that it's Yang Yi. You see, isn't it the time when gossip is flying and the wind and waves are on the cusp? If it's very special to her, isn't it her husband?" Zhong Zhenjin's guess also appeared in the minds of many fans at the scene. They all widened their eyes, some were excited, and some felt strange. However, there was no need to guess blindly. At the back of the stage, a tall man in a black casual suit slowly walked out with a guitar in his arms. Is it really him? It's really him. Seeing this height, the fans who paid attention to yesterday's gossip immediately recognized him. After confirming the guess in their hearts, the audience screamed again. "That's what I said. How could Murphy not respond at all?" Chu Fangfang's Zhong Zhenjin excitedly shook her arm and said, "She directly brought him out to meet the parents, no, to meet the fans. Murphy is really decisive. Compared to those stars who refused to admit it, she's so cool that she has no friends." For this performance, Yang Yi specially wore a suit that he rarely wore, mainly because he was tired of wearing it in his previous life. However, his dressing was not formal. Not only did his suit not come with a tie, but the collar of his shirt was also unbuttoned. There was a sense of unruly wildness in his gentleness. His legs are so long. Chu Fangfang's Zhong Zhenjin couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She poked Chu Fangfang and said, "Hey Piggy, did you see that? This Yang Yi, after dressing up properly, is much more handsome." "Is it because he's tall? Tall people are handsome in suits." Chu Fangfang gave an objective evaluation and said, "But I'm a little worried. Can Yang Yi sing?" This question also appeared in the hearts of many fans present. They were surprised by Yang Yi's appearance, but they also felt that it was strange. Why would Murphy let an author come out and sing with her? If he didn't sing well, wouldn't it ruin his reputation? Moreover, wouldn't it make people dislike Yang Yi even more? Chu Fangfang secretly broke into a sweat for Yang Yi. She wasn't like some brainless fans who chased after celebrities to the point of interfering with their relationships. Chu Fangfang felt that emotional problems were fine as long as Murphy was happy. However, Zhong Zhenjin expressed a different opinion about Chu Fangfang's question. "I think this Yang Yi must be hiding something. Look, he even brought a guitar on stage. Maybe he can sing well. If he doesn't have any singing skills, how could he capture Murphy's heart?" Chu Fangfang thought about it and felt that it made sense. However, there was no need for them to make wild guesses. The music on stage had already started. The prelude was a guitar solo. A burst of warm guitar sound was transmitted through the microphone in front of Yang Yi and into the ears of the fans below the stage. "Hey, not bad." Chu Fangfang's eyes lit up. However, his companion laughed and mercilessly pulled him back to the cruel reality. "Wake up. Do you think Murphy sang to you?" She watched her husband sing. At this moment when Murphy sang, the accompaniment was no longer Yang Yi's guitar alone. The band behind also started their work. "Flowers bloom as much as you want, decorate your years, my buds." Murphy finished singing and smiled. She raised her hand and pointed the camera at Yang Yi. This smile was like a garden full of flowers blooming, bright and enchanting spring in full bloom. However, the camera on the big screen was slowly turned to Yang Yi's side by the cameraman. Yang Yi did not have Murphy's enchanting smile. On the stage, he did not smile and gave people the feeling that he was a little cold. But just as he opened his mouth, the whole audience was shocked. Note 1. "Who can replace you?" That low and deep voice, with a strong magnetism, suddenly made many picky ears unable to help but burp. Beautiful. Only one word, beautiful. So beautiful that it was suffocating and unbelievable. Was this sung by a writer? Chu Fangfang opened her mouth in surprise, but this scene was playing out in every corner of the venue. Almost everyone was shocked by the moment Yang Yi opened his mouth. They could not believe their ears. They could not believe that Yang Yi's voice was so beautiful. "Love as much as you want while you're young." Yang Yi told them the next sentence. Yes, you heard it right. Although they could not see the reactions of the fans below the stage, Murphy, who was next to Yang Yi, was overflowing with joy and pride. "Did you see that? This is my husband. Dearest, dearest, the road is long, let's be together." After Yang Yi finished singing, the camera switched to Murphy's side. However, this time the director used another camera. With a gradual switch, Yang Yi's figure temporarily remained on the screen. For a moment, there was a scene of the two in the same frame. "I'll sing me to you," Murphy sang. Before Murphy's long voice fell, Yang Yi also raised his voice and sang the lyrics. Although it did not have the stunning feeling of the bass just now, it still reflected his and Murphy's tacit cooperation. "Give me your pure and innocent smile." Although this section was sung by Yang Yi according to the order, Murphy took on the lead part of the song in order to reflect Yang Yi's singing skills. "We should have happy, blissful, sunny days." Murphy sang the lead and Yang Yi harmonized. Note 2. Zhong Zhenjin did not feel anything, but Chu Fangfang, who had closed her eyes to listen carefully, could not help but open them. She looked at Yang Yi, who had also appeared on the big screen at this moment, with some surprise. This harmonization was very accurate. Not only did it not steal the lead singer's limelight, but it also maintained a very harmonious complement effect. Like Chu Fangfang, there were indeed many fans who could hear the difference. At this moment, they had gradually gained an understanding of Yang Yi's singing skills. It was not weaker than a real singer. However, pure fans like Zhong Xinjin made up the majority. They were also happy. They only needed to listen to the song and enjoy the beauty of the song. This song was indeed suitable for a male and female duet, especially a live version of a male and female duet. I'll sing me to you. This time, it was the opposite. Yang Yi sang the lead and Murphy followed. I'll use my burning feelings to move you, okay? Time is worth remembering, reluctant to part with, shy blushing face. Under the camera, Yang Yi looked at Murphy. His cold face seemed to have softened. His eyes were as deep as the stars, and his tenderness was revealed without any concealment. Being looked at by Yang Yi in public like this, Murphy's heart was sweet and shy. It was really as she sang in the harmonization. Her pure and beautiful face shyly lowered slightly. Who can replace you? Love to your heart's content while you're young. My dearest person, the road is long. Let's be together. It was still Yang Yi who sang this part. That gentle and affectionate magnetic bass made tens of thousands of fans unable to help but indulge in it. Chu Fangfang closed her eyes and listened with a look of intoxication. However, her roommate did not give her a chance to appreciate it. Zhong Xinjin, the fake fan, shook her arm vigorously, put on a fangirl face and shouted, I can't. Yang Yi actually sings so well. When will he debut? I want to be his #1 fangirl. Chu Fangfang could not help but laugh. She pinched Zhong Xinjin's baby fat face and said angrily, Can you stop for a moment? Did you forget? This Yang Yi is also taken. He and Murphy have registered their marriage. That's right. Zhong Xinjin reacted and sighed in disappointment. Chapter 438. In the beginning, Yang Yi's voice was so stunning that many fans forgot to think. They were only immersed in his and Murphy's singing. But as the lyrics were repeated, the initial excitement gradually subsided, and their thoughts returned to normal. Yang Yi's singing was very good. This made many fans who were not optimistic about the union between him and Murphy feel conflicted. Now it seemed that Murphy and Yang Yi were together, and it seemed that it was not bad. In front of them, the two people who were singing affectionately on stage were a perfect match. The man was tall and straight, and the woman was also tall and beautiful. Yang Yi's black suit covered up the burly and oppressive feeling that the photo in the entertainment tabloids gave people. It no longer gave people the illusion that he and Murphy would be Beauty and the Beast when they were together. What made the fans confused was that Yang Yi, who was playing the guitar, exuded a strong artistic aura. His cold face seemed to be tough and handsome at this moment. More importantly, the two of them were singing a love song together. The tacit understanding between them, and the way they looked at each other tenderly, while holding hands made it difficult for people to dislike them. They were so compatible. How could they bear to break them up? But what about Mu Xiang? Could it be that they were willing to give up the Momu couple that they had been fans of for a long time? At this moment, many fans could not help but feel pity for Mu Xiang. They felt that he was a pitiful person who was isolated by the whole world. He wrote a song and even sang a duet for the couple. They wondered if he was full of dog food. They wondered if he was squatting in some corner and crying bitterly. This person was too miserable. Just as the fans were feeling conflicted, Want to Sing Me to You was coming to an end. Dearest, the road is long. Let's be together. Yang Yi, who had already put down his guitar, and came to the front of the stage hand in hand with Murphy, looked at Murphy and finished singing together. It was as if they were telling the fans that just like the lyrics, they had to keep going on like this. Even though Yang Yi lowered his voice so that it could blend in with Murphy's voice, even though it was no longer the magnetic and moving male voice, the fans' attention was no longer on Yang Yi's voice. They looked at Murphy leaning on Yang Yi's shoulder, looked at her and Yang Yi's fingers intertwined, looked at her, who rarely revealed her emotions, and couldn't help but smile in happiness. At this moment, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The music behind him slowly came to an end. At first, there was some silence below the stage, but no one knew who started cheering first. Gradually, it became a chorus of cheers. Gradually, it seemed that everyone was infected, and the whole audience burst into applause and cheers. This was the applause of recognition. Although it came a little late, it was also the first step towards accepting Yang Yi. Amidst the applause and cheers, Murphy, who was leaning on Yang Yi, finally remembered that she was the protagonist of this stage. She finally took the initiative. Murphy and Yang Yi looked at each other and smiled. Then she pulled Yang Yi to the middle of the edge of the stage. What kind of introduction would it be? The fans below the stage looked forward to it, and the noise gradually stopped. Everyone pricked up their ears to listen. Ahem. In the end, Murphy, who was not good with words, was still a little nervous before she opened her mouth. She seemed to be giving herself courage. She coughed twice, straightened her chest, and said with a serious face, "Hello everyone." Some of the audience couldn't help but laugh, and soft laughter could be heard. However, Murphy continued, "Let me introduce to everyone, this is my husband Yang Yi." The audience below the stage exclaimed. It wasn't that they were surprised by the name or the identity, but that no one expected Murphy to introduce him so simply and straightforwardly describe the relationship between Yang Yi and her. "Call him husband." Zhong Zhenjin elbowed Chu Fangfang and said with a smile, "So mushy." Chu Fangfang couldn't help but roll her eyes. Then she said in surprise, "Shouldn't you be disappointed? You just said that you're Yang Yi's fangirl." "I'm still very rational. He's married." Before Zhong Zhenjin could finish, she was interrupted by Chu Fangfang. "Wait, don't be noisy." Chu Fangfang's eyes widened as if she had heard something. She covered Zhong Zhenjin's mouth and looked at the stage in shock. A few seconds ago, Murphy waited for the exclamations to stop. Then she raised the microphone and said, "Then you may not know that Yang Yi has a special identity in addition to being a very, very powerful writer as described in the newspaper." Many people, like Chu Fangfang, widened their eyes. They had automatically filtered out Murphy's description of a very, very powerful writer, which was completely in the eye of the beholder. Instead, they focused on the special identity. Could it be, could it be? When the subtitles of the song came out, some people had vaguely guessed the truth, but they didn't dare to believe it at all. Murphy didn't keep them in suspense. She looked very serious and said, "Yang Yi is also a very, very powerful songwriter, which is known to everyone as Mu Ziyang." Boom. The audience was in an uproar. Was it really Mu Ziyang? The fans who had this premonition before were all wide-mouthed. It was actually Mu Ziyang? The fans who hadn't thought of it before were also wide-mouthed. And the fans who had angrily said that Mo Fei would abandon Mu Ziyang if she didn't want to be with Mu Ziyang but Yang Yi, opened their mouths wide and looked embarrassed. At this moment, their inner OS. F***CK, how could it be Mu Ziyang? Zhong Zhenjin, the gossipy girl, was also very excited at this moment. However, she wasn't embarrassed. Instead, she found it very interesting. She pulled down Chu Fangfang's hand that was covering her mouth and poked Chu Fangfang's waist. She said with a smile, "This is fun. What about those guys under Murphy's micro-broadcasting who indiscriminately scolded Yang Yi? Now they find out that Yang Yi is their idol Mu Ziyang. I feel like I'm going to die from embarrassment." Chu Fangfang didn't have time to pay attention to Zhong Zhenjin. She looked at the stage and heard Murphy's confirmation. "Yes, Mu Ziyang is Yang Yi. Yang Yi is Mu Ziyang." Phew. Chu Fangfang let out a long sigh of relief. She smiled happily and said, "Don't worry about whether it's embarrassing or not. I think this is the best result for the fans and Murphy." Yes. Wasn't this what everyone wanted to see? What the fans hoped for had all come true. First of all, Mo Fei and Mu Ziyang were a couple. When the two of them got together, the fans didn't have to worry, because in the future, they would create more and better music. Just like today's song, "Want to Sing Me to You." The sweetness was refreshing. Secondly, Murphy was married to love. Looking at her happy face, even some of the fans who were still brooding about it just wanted to give their blessings at this moment. Since he was already satisfied, what did it matter even if the previous misunderstandings, the grudges, and the unpleasant words spouted out were difficult to take back and unavoidable awkwardness? After the awkwardness, They could continue to give their blessings and cheer for Murphy. Therefore, after the uproar and silence brought about by the shock, applause and cheers gradually sounded from the audience. Finally, the applause and cheers covered the entire stadium. "Murphy, you must be happy." The late blessings and acceptance from tens of thousands of fans made Murphy's eyes fill with tears. Thank you everyone." Murphy was moved and choked with sobs. Yang-yi considerately opened his left arm and hugged her. However, today, Mo-Fei didn't come here to embarrass them. She wanted to officially disclose her relationship and family situation to the public. Therefore, she hadn't completed her mission yet. Murphy calmed down and raised the microphone again. She smiled happily and said, "Actually, I want to introduce someone to you today." The fans below the stage were stunned for a moment and cheered wildly. Chapter 439. Cece was also dressed up beautifully today. She was wearing a light blue dress with woven sleeves and a light blue hairband on her head. On the right side of the hairband, there was a light blue gauze flower inlaid on it. Although the light blue color did not have the girlish aura of pink, it still made the little girl look extra lively and cute in it. After her father went on stage to sing, Shishi was taken care of by Aunt Mo Shawan. However, she did not stay in the lounge but hid backstage. She had watched her parents' performance. There were also some dancers backstage. They were waiting for the next performance to accompany Murphy. At this time, they were also chattering. They all say that Murphy sings well. I didn't expect Yang-yi to sing so well. Shishi turned her little head and looked at their backs. She heard a few words in her ears. They seemed to be praising her father. The little girl was happy and proud. She puffed out her chest and muttered softly, "That's my papa." However, it was noisy backstage. Shishi's voice was soft, so no one noticed. Mo Xiaojuan's attention was not on Shishi. She listened carefully to Murphy's introduction on stage. However, she held Shishi's hand in case she got lost. Finally, she heard the instructions. Mo Xiaowan smiled. She squatted down and put her hand on Shishi's shoulder. She said softly, "Shishi, it's your turn to go on stage." It turned out that Murphy had suddenly thought of this problem after she came back last night. She discussed it with Yang-yi. She felt that since the media had exposed Shishi's photos, there was no need for her to continue hiding Shishi. She might as well openly introduce Shishi to the public. That was why she was doing this now. However, even though they had played on this stage a few times in the past 2 days and had been fine during rehearsals, Murphy and the others didn't expect that when it was Shishi's turn to perform tonight, there would be a problem. Shishi was seen running towards her parents on the stage. However, as soon as she poked her head out, she felt the enthusiastic cheers from the audience and was stunned. This was different from the rehearsal. Why are there so many people? The deafening screams were especially clear and terrifying when Shishi came out from backstage. After all, the little girl was only 4.5 years old. She was a little stunned by this big scene. After hearing this, she subconsciously turned around and ran. The protagonist ran back after showing his face. The loyal cameraman recorded this scene and conveyed it to the audience sitting in the corners through the big screen. Ouch! Murphy's fans below the stage couldn't help but laugh. However, it was a kind laugh, as they felt that this little girl was too cute. Speaking of which, it was interesting. Perhaps it was because Yang-yi attracted too much attention, but Shishi, who was also in the center of the whirlpool of gossip, didn't receive as much attention. Everyone only discussed her age enthusiastically. Or perhaps it was because Shishi was a child, but the kind-hearted people were a little more polite. When they criticized Yang-yi, they didn't mention Shishi. Now the live audience knew that Shishi didn't need to be introduced. She was Murphy and Mu Xiang's daughter. Moreover, she was so cute. Who could bear to blame her? Just as they watched in amusement as Shishi ran back and wondered what to do, a woman covered her face and ran out with Shishi. This woman brought Shishi to Yang-yi's side, then covered her face and ran off. This scene on the screen caused the fans to laugh again. That's right. It was Mo Xiaowan. Yes, this was simply burying her head in the sand. But Mo Xiaowan, who was covering her face, was also in despair. She hadn't thought that she would have to go on stage. She hadn't touched up her makeup and her hair was a mess, but now it was too late. She could only cover her face and send Shishi, who was too scared to go on stage alone, onto the stage. Of course, Mo Shawan wasn't the main character. After the audience laughed, they didn't care about the woman who was covering her face. They all focused on the big screen. The cute little girl was being carried by Yang Yi. The laughter made the little girl so shy that she buried her face in her father's arms like an ostrich. "What's wrong? Are you afraid?" Yang Yi said gently in his daughter's ear. "Don't be afraid. Dad is here." In her father's arms and listening to his voice, Shishi's heart calmed down a little. She hugged her father's neck and complained in a low voice, "Papa, it's so dark. There are so many people. I'm afraid." It turned out that it was also because of the darkness. How could Shishi not be afraid of such a dark mass and such terrible sounds? "Don't be afraid," Yang Yi said gently to Shishi. "Dad is holding you. You can be afraid of anything, because whether it's a monster or a big bad wolf, Dad will defeat them, right?" In order to let Shishi relax a little, Yang Yi pointed to the camera in front of her and said, "Look, this big camera is filming us." Shishi couldn't help but be curious. After all, she didn't experience this when she walked on stage in the afternoon. She turned her head and looked in the direction her father pointed. "Then look at the big screen behind you. See if we're on it." Yang Yi smiled and pointed to the super big screen, which was where Murphy appeared before. At this time, Shishi suddenly felt as if the whole world only had Shishi, her father, and her mother next to her. She didn't need to be too nervous. Then she followed her father and looked behind. "Wow. It's so big." The little girl showed an amazed expression. The cameraman quickly turned the camera around, and it was just enough to capture the young girl's face. Her big round eyes and cute little face instantly captured the hearts of many fans. I'm on it." Shishi forgot to be nervous. She giggled, grabbed her father's arm, and pointed at the big screen above. Although they couldn't hear what Shishi was saying, her smiling eyes, which were like crescent moons, instantly infected all the fans. Their mood also became clear and happy. Finally, they could get back on track. Murphy held a microphone and said, "Shishi, can you introduce yourself to the brothers and sisters who came to watch Mom's concert today?" Shishi turned her head. Although she was still a little nervous, she could still communicate. She nodded her little head. "Then tell your brothers and sisters first. What's your name?" Murphy guided. Yang Yi pointed the microphone in his hand at Shishi. The little girl's crisp voice finally came through the sound system. "My name is Yang Shi. I'm 4 years old this year." Murphy didn't need to ask the last sentence. She habitually said it herself. She had introduced herself like this before. When Shishi heard her voice become so loud, she looked around in surprise. Hearing Shishi's soft voice and unique emphasis, the fans below the stage couldn't help but applaud her. "Then what's your papa's name?" Murphy asked with a smile. "My papa's name is Yang Yi," Shishi said obediently. Now Shishi was no longer nervous. Moreover, she felt that it was very fun. She had been curious about how the microphone in front of her could make her voice so loud. Her ability to adapt was quite good. "What's your mom's name?" Murphy continued to ask. "My mom's name is Murphy. It's you," the little girl said with a smile. This sweet laughter almost softened the hearts of the fans below the stage. "Thank you, Shishi. Yes, this is the second person I want to introduce to you today. She is Yang Yi's and my daughter, Shishi." Shishi's self-introduction ended here. After Murphy kissed the little girl's face, she asked Yang Yi to take Shishi down first. After watching Yang Yi return to the backstage with Shishi in his arms, Murphy sincerely bowed to the audience and said, "I'm sorry that we have kept it from you for so many years. It's also my fault. I've always had a deep burden of being an idol. I'm worried that you can't accept it. I'm also worried that after exposure, excessive media attention will be detrimental to the child's growth. Can you forgive me for telling you now?" "Forgive me? Of course I forgive you." The audience's voices rose one after another. Mo Fei's sincere explanation won her a round of applause from the audience. And the fans were all very cute. "Thank you everyone." Yang Yi is a relatively low-key person, so he used the name Muziong before. He was also worried that the relationship between us would be exposed. I didn't expect that it would cause misunderstandings. However, please rest assured that in the future, we will still work hard to create more good songs for you as before. Murphy bowed deeply again. It doesn't matter. As long as you are happy. We all like you very much. We also like Shishi. The screams of the fans below the stage made Mo-Fei feel warm in her heart. Although this confession took a long time, after all, this was Murphy's concert. Murphy didn't forget. Thank you again, everyone. I also hope that you will pay less attention to the child and give her more space to grow. I don't know what to say, so I will continue to sing for you. From today onwards, everything seems to have returned to the beginning. However, just like the songs that Yang Yi wrote for me, I also hope that I cannot forget my original intention and continue to work hard on the road of music. I will sing for all of you who support me. This is enough. Murphy wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and said with a smile. Today, she really smiled a lot, but this scene made the fans happy and distressed at the same time. However, when the music started, everything seemed to have returned to the right track. Murphy also quickly returned to her normal state. If pride is not coldly smashed by the sea of reality, how would you know how hard you need to work to go far? Murphy's clear and beautiful voice sounded in the stadium again. All the impetuous hearts calmed down. The fans waved their light sticks and quietly listened to Murphy's song. No, they listened to her talk about her original dream. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.